Good evening. How are you, RFM?
I'm great, thank you. I was waiting for your cold open.
Oh, well, no cold open, but tonight's going to
Okay.
be a ton of fun. But before we get to it, we'll talk about Masonry having to do with the temple endowment, what early church leaders said, what the documents show. But I wanted to start off first just checking in to see how your week's been, seeing how things are.
Hellacious. I don't even want to talk about it. This will be the quickest part of tonight's show.
All right. Well, then we could just jump through it. But RFM, you've got crazy things happening, it sounds like, but none of them are going to make the airwaves.
No, none of these.
Okay. Let's start off by having a conversation around you joined the Church of Jesus Christ, Latter-day Saints, Mormonism. You joined it in 1978. I joined it in 1996, practically 20 years later. But we share a lot of commonality. Mormonism stayed pretty consistent from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And that Mormonism was the Mormonism that a lot of our older followers, not the young kids, but the middle-aged folks and above, that's the Mormonism that they've experienced. Talk for a moment about when you joined the church, the first few years, you go through the temple. What is it that you're taught to believe about the temple, and what are the things you sort of learn? And then to try to get an answer for what those are, what are the explanations that we get? And I want to share some of that too. So we'll see how this goes. And I'd love to hear your personal experience.
Well, thank you very much. So what we're talking about is connections between the rituals of two secret societies and whether they overlap, and if so, how much. So you have to be a member of one secret society to know what goes on in that temple, and you have to be a member of the second secret society to know what goes on in that second temple. And I think that the LDS Church has capitalized on that fact for a long time, at least up until the 1970s. So talking about me specifically, because I know we're going to go over all these documents that we have to trace the origin, and the explanations, the understanding of the temple endowment and its connection or lack thereof with Masonry, is that I joined the church. I don't remember encountering Masonic anti-Mormon arguments specifically before I went on my mission and before I went through the temple. But when I got back, I know that in the 1980s, I certainly had. And so I'm in my 20s. I'm in my apologetic phase. And I did encounter it, absolutely. But here's the thing. The main thing that I encountered, my recollection is hearing whispers here and there about there being connections, similarities, if not identicalities, between parts of the Masonic temple ritual and the LDS temple ritual. Now, those were only the whispers that I heard. What I heard the strong voices claiming was there is no connection between the two. And so I took that on faith that that was true. And then I found out later that it was not. Now, what I did not know is that 4 years before I joined the church, a huge watershed moment in this discussion happened when Reed Durham gave a presentation about connections between the LDS temple and the Masonic temple. That was in 1974. Reed Durham was president of the Mormon History Association and director of Institute at the University of Utah. And he delivered a speech on Masonry at the annual gathering of the History Association. The church reacted strongly. Why would they react strongly unless this was something that they were trying to keep the lid on with denials and not talking about it, ignoring it, not emphasizing it? The church reacted strongly, forcing him to write an apology, which was promptly distributed to all in attendance. Sorry for telling you the truth, guys. Reed Durham never again attended another Mormon History Association conference, and Leonard Arrington asserted that, quote, Reed has never been an effective church history researcher since that date. The church today suggests that Masonic events and ideas served as a mere catalyst for further revelation. So after the cat got out of the bag, they tried to put it back in the bag with Reed Durham. But with that and other things and the internet, I think basically everybody who cares about this at all understands by this point that there are lots of connections between the Masonic and the Mormon temple endowment.
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting moment where Mormonism is utilizing a thing that when you see it, you know what it is. If you've done other things, you've been part of the Rotary, you've gone to Kiwanis, you've been in the Catholic Church, you've checked out the Protestant faith down the street. When you've seen Masonry rituals, you've seen them, and you know it when you see it. And the link between Mormonism and the Masonic rituals are so similar, so much that is directly plagiarized, or only a slight shift is made where it's still only like that thing, that it's crystal clear that that's what's going on. And I find it interesting what you said, Arfin, because I experienced this the same way, where the original explanation I got was these are two different things. They're unrelated. This is just what the anti-Mormons say, is that the rituals come from Masonry. But if you stick it with it for any length of time, it becomes clear that that doesn't work. That apologetic falls short. And so the next thing that I got was that, oh yeah, they are connected. Mormonism does take rituals and take things from Masonry to do those, but that's because Masonry is this ancient ritual that's been corrupted, and Joseph Smith is the restorer. He's the guy who does the restoration of everything. Why the hell wouldn't he restore ancient rituals that go back to Adam and Eve, or at the very least go back to the Temple of Solomon?
Yes.
These are the rituals by which past generations and ancient times got their temple endowment, got their new name, got their washings and anointings, and got the highest ordinances to be able to go back to live with Heavenly Father in the celestial kingdom.
Yeah, forget sacrificing all those animals and stuff. They were doing Masonic rituals back in Solomon's temple.
Yeah, and that answer felt good for a while. But then if you keep reading and keep digging, you find that the quietest voices, but the most educated and informed voices, were acknowledging that Masonry doesn't go back that far. It only goes back a few hundred years. And there isn't any real evidence, any sort of tangible scholarly evidence that says it goes back far enough to justify these answers. But I thought that was modern Mormonism. And in reality, we have to go back to the beginning, because it makes perfect sense why we said the things we did, because it's based on the teachings that the earliest of leaders gave the saints around why this looks so much like Masonry.
Bill, let me just say that I made fun, and I think appropriately so, of the idea that they were doing Masonic rituals back in Solomon's temple, okay? But that's what I thought. I read research on this, and well, so where are they doing it? Are they doing it like, I don't know, on the altar? No. See, there's a place inside the precincts, and it's on the interior walls where like they have these rooms, and we don't know what they did with the rooms. Actually, I think scholars figure they used them for storage and stuff, but it was in these rooms. You see, there's these unaccounted for rooms in Solomon's temple, and that's where they were doing the endowment. That's where they were doing the Mormon rituals.
Yeah. And there would be pictures. I remember people showing me pictures of Solomon's temple and trying to make a bath of some sort be a baptismal font, or have this part of the temple is so similar to having a veil and, having someone reach through the Holy of Holies. And there was people along the way, both in my ward as well as apologists in the church on the internet, who were trying to get me to believe that if we went back, if you and I could get in the car with Doc Stone and get up to whatever it is, 7.8 gigawatts, and go back in time, that we would end up at Solomon's temple. And if we could just see, we would see that they are doing something similar to the Mormon endowment of the 1980s and 90s.
Yes, and if we go back to 1820, we would see God the Father and Jesus Christ appearing to Joseph Smith in the Sacred Grove too. I'll tell you something though. Oh, let me think. What was it you were talking about? Going back in time, and I was talking about really believing that this is what they were doing, and this is something that has been going on. I wanted to say that just because the church came to the point where they weren't talking about it and really leaned on people who did bring up the connection, doesn't mean that they started that way. Okay. Because the church started completely aware of the Masonic connection because they were all freaking Masons in, at least all the men were practically in Nauvoo. Yeah. And so they understood and they talked about the connection. And they said exactly what you said, Bill, is that Joseph Smith has done what he did with Christianity. He restored true Christianity from the remnants that were still there. And he's restored to us true Masonry through the remnants that were still there. And he has restored the actual temple ordinances from the Temple of Solomon.
Yeah.
And that was the belief. But then the time came when they stopped talking about that. And they decided, kind of like, with the Adam God theory or with using the seer stone, they talk about these things for a certain period of time rather openly. And then they start not talking about them. And it kind of gets suppressed. And then it gets hidden. And then it gets lied about. And then it gets revealed. And then we hear, well, we weren't hiding it. That's kind of the whole progress, I think.
That process has worked out on 100 issues just like that, where the early leaders think, hey, Joseph's got something here and we don't have any way to prove him wrong. It matches with some assumption we make about our society or our culture or the ancient cultures that lived before us. So let's proclaim it. Joseph Smith can translate Egyptian. Joseph Smith can read a Kinderhook plate. It doesn't matter what we come across. Joseph Smith uses everything in reality to give little tidbits. He'll grab onto something that everybody agrees with, and then he'll expound on it, and they go, look at that guy. And as you point out, as time goes on, we go, hey, no. There's an issue.
Look at that guy.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that anymore. Let's deny it. Let's go silent after that because people keep making a connection. So let's just not get caught lying about it. And then eventually let's accept that it was there and repurpose why we got it the way we did. Yeah. That's what Mormonism does. So with that, the reason that this episode became interesting to me, RFM, is that I've always been aware of maybe two of these quotes, enough to figure out the gist of the issue and what's going on in Mormonism. But I was on Ex-Mormon Reddit a month ago or so, and I came across an old forum where an old Reddit post where someone had put a bunch of the quotes that leaders have said about this, and they essentially put all this, the quote, the source it was in. I thought, man, I bet I could find original documents for a bunch of these, and it would be fun for the audience to see how overwhelming early Mormonism, its leaders, how adamant they were, how, as Neil Anderson says, that true doctrine is that which all 15 men are testifying of. This is sort of that issue where you go back and all of the leaders are consistent. They're all talking about this thing. And all of a sudden you start to see a shift, and we'll just go through that tonight and show folks. Does
that mean it's doctrine to file fraudulent documents with the Securities and Exchange Commission?
It is fraudulent to file.
Is it doctrine?
I don't.
It takes all 15 to agree to it. I don't know.
Yeah, they all got on board that one, didn't they? Mm-hmm. All right, so let me get rid of something on my screen. And
so is that Joseph Smith in temple garb listening in on the Masons and picking up on their secrets to use?
Yeah, I just wanted to have AI create a fun little image where Joseph Smith is peeking around the corner of the Masonic ritual in his Mormon temple garb. Notice the AI creator of the art, how it interpreted the Baker hat that everybody wears.
I kind of like it.
Yeah, he's looking in and he's stealing their secrets. And
he's got to be careful or he's going to end up like Hiram Abiff.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that didn't go well for Hiram either.
No, but I think he got resurrected. That's the good news.
That is. It's almost its own Book of the Dead.
It sounds like Jesus.
Yeah, or Egyptian. All right, so this first one, and these aren't necessarily in chronological order, although they will stay in a section. The first section will be the early teachings and how we testified that there was a connection between Mormonism, Mormon temple rituals, and Masonry. And later on, we'll come in with some of the quotes that have come out that have abandoned that or disputed that. But to start off with, this is, I'll start with this one. Later at a special conference in Salt Lake City, this was in Heber C. Kimball, his journal. And I tried to find his journal online. I know there's a copy at Family Pond here in Hurricane, but I couldn't find a copy of it online. But I did find the quote in a Stanley Kimball article. Stanley Kimball was Heber C. Kimball's grandson, I think, or great-grandson maybe, because Spencer W. Kimball is his dad, if I'm not mistaken. And Heber C. Kimball, I think, is his great-grandfather or his grandfather. So in Heber C. Kimball and family, the Nauvoo years, this had the quote, and it said, later at a special conference in Salt Lake City on 9 November 1858, Kimball said the following, and I'm going to put the comments up on the screen too so people can see what others are saying.
I'm getting nephew. He's the nephew. No, the nephew of J. Golden Kimball and the grandnephew of Heber C. Kimball.
Okay, there you go. We have the true Masonry. The Masonry of today is received from the apostasy which took place in the days of Solomon and David. So there's already this inkling of what I'll call a great apostasy. Later at a special conference in Salt Lake City on 9 November 1858, Kimball said the following: we have the true Masonry. The Masonry of today is received. By the way, you said, I know I keep stopping mid-sentence, but it makes me think of things. When you just said earlier that Joseph was restoring the true Masonry, we all know what you meant. But that is the way that this is worded. They are looking at Masonry as this corrupted thing, and it's being restored. And this is the correct and true Masonry, that which the Mormons are doing. The Masonry.
I'm not positive about this relationship. I'm seeing other things that indicate it might be a nephew.
Okay. Stanley B. Kimball is a nephew of
Spencer. He wrote an article 10 years after this one that you're looking at right now, titled Uncle Spencer.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And I think it's in the first person. Yeah.
I'm really sorry about the misstatement there. We have the true Masonry. The Masonry of today is received from the apostasy, which took place in the days of Solomon and David. They have now and then a thing that is correct, but we have the real thing. And the other thing I ran into, RFM, is that when I learned that Masonry goes, that the temple rituals go back to Masonry, one of the quick apologetic efforts that was made towards me was to distance Joseph Smith from the statements, acknowledge that Heber C. Kimball said this, but to then add on top that he might have just been, shooting from the hip, and that we don't have anything from Joseph Smith. And so it's not fair to attribute this to Joseph. But man, it's sort of a strange thing to think Heber just invented this.
Well, yeah, of course. And he's not the only one. He's not just the only person singing the song. Lots of other people do too. I do note, by the way, and now I'm seeing something here in the same article, and I'm going to stop looking at this because I think this is probably the least important thing we'll be talking about tonight is the relationship between Stanley Kimball and Spencer Kimball. Now I'm finding my grandmother, he wrote, informed me that she was a 1/2 first cousin to the new general authority, Spencer Kimball, making me a 1/2 first cousin twice removed.
Oh, that's so am I.
Yeah. Okay, so distant shirt tail.
Okay, we won't even count it. It doesn't count.
No. But you notice it's 1975. The following year after the Reed-Durham speech raised such a ruckus that Stanley Kimball is writing an article and quoting this in it. I think he's making a point, perhaps.
Yeah, trying to stick up for letting the truth be told. Let's put the quotes out. Let's make the statements about what really was, and let's not run from our history.
And this is the one that I'm the most familiar with, is the one from Heber C. Kimball.
Yeah, me too. This was the only one I knew of when somebody tried to make it so that Joseph Smith never approached this topic. This was just Heber C. Kimball shooting from the hip. But there are a bunch more. And this is Heber C. Kimball, letter to Parley Pratt, June 17th, 1842. This might be the same thing. In fact, I think this is. But I just wanted to have the original document there so you can see this. Heber C. Kimball letter, Parley Pratt, 17 of June, 1842.
No, the first one, this one was from a later discourse, I think.
Oh.
Or this is his what do you call it? His diary. This is 1858. So
that's early.
Yeah, but this is 1842. This is contemporary.
This is even earlier than that. Brother Joseph in Sydney was the first that was received into the lodge. All of the 12 have become members except Orson Pratt. He hangs back. He will wake up soon. There is a similarity of priesthood in Masonry. Brother Joseph sees Masonry, says Masonry was taken from priesthood, but has become degenerated. But he's got degenerated. But many things are perfect. We have a procession on the 24th of June, which is called by Masons St. John's Day in this country. I think it will result in good. He just goes on there. But this is an inkling of connecting the dot to Joseph. And again, you and I, by the time we get to the end of this, the audience will not be surprised. It's going to be clear that this is, permeated all through the early history, and that Joseph Smith is the author of this theology and doctrine. And so then we have to deal with what it is that he said about it and what other early leaders said about it. And if the change that we've made to 2025 is so far from the original theology that the only explanation is that the church was wrong and it's tried to cover its ass by creating a new explanation for why that's there.
Right. By the way, in passing, the 24th day of June, let me back up from that and say that the patron saints of Masonry are the two Johns. There's St. John the Baptist and St. John the Apostle. On the 24th day of June, that is St. John the Baptist's birthday. And that's why the Masons are having a procession on June 24th.
That's the biblical connection to Masonry, that Masonry it has its sort of patron saints.
Yes, and of course you can sort of get there from the Bible, because we understand from the Bible that John the Baptist was born 6 months before Jesus. So they didn't put it right on the 25th, but the 24th is pretty close.
Yeah. So there's that one. I'll let you, I'm going to go forward here. I'll let you read this one. This is Heber C. Kimball, Mormon Patriarch and Pioneer. This maybe this one is the duplicate. If so, I'll let you have the next one here too. And
this is the letter to Parley Pratt, June 17th, 1842, that you just read. Yeah.
That's just another source. Okay. So then we have this. This is, they might have known that he was not a fallen prophet. The Nauvoo Journal of Joseph Smith.
Joseph Fielding?
Yeah, Joseph Fielding. Sorry, Journal of Joseph Fielding. Transcribed and edited by Andrew E.H.A.T.
E-Hat.
And I'm not familiar with this, but this was a new, I don't know if it was dialogue or I think it was his dialogue article.
Tim from Bakersfield, I'm sure, is familiar with him.
Yeah. If the quote is above, I'll tell you the thing about this one. I'll let you read the quote here, and then I want to say something about the source.
Okay, so this is 1844. Is this his journal?
Journal of Joseph Fielding is where this is alleged to be.
All right. Many have joined the Masonic institution. This seems to have been a stepping stone or preparation for something else. The true origin of Masonry.
Yeah. In the source, this happens a few times tonight, and I'll try to remember when we run into those so that you can be aware. But there would be a report of it being in an early source. I can't find the early source online. I find the quote somewhere else, and so I at least show that others are attributing to the quote to that original place, and they're publishing scholarship on it.
Can I mention something here in the footnote 22 where it gives the rest of the quote? Because this is one of two times that this subject comes up where apparently Joseph Smith is teaching, or at least the Mormons are understanding, that there is a connection between the coming forth of the true Masonry and the spirit of Elijah. Now, this is one of the places where it's been observed that in the 1840s, there are a number of people who are talking about Elijah coming in the future as if he hadn't already come in Kirtland back in 1836. And it's a bit of a strange thing. But here's what it says after that. I have also seen and rejoiced in it. Stone of okay, the true origin of Masonry. That's where I stopped. This winter, there was, and that winter would have been 43, 44, I would presume. This winter, there was much preaching throughout the city, much said on the subject of the coming or spirit of Elijah. There has been great light poured out upon the saints of late, and a great spirit of hearing. I have been called to preach several times and felt much of the spirit in general. I have felt much of the spirit. I think there should probably be a period there. In general, I have felt well, increasing in light and knowledge, and also enjoy having the goodwill, etc. So it's mainly that part about that. If I'm understanding him correctly, the winter of 1843-44, there was a great deal of preaching throughout the city of Nauvoo about the coming of the spirit of Elijah.
When that had happened years ago in 1836 or 37 in the Kirtland Temple.
Yeah, in April. So I don't know what's going on there. I think others have researched this more, and it's an interesting area, because is he really saying that we need what we already have? Is this something where it hadn't been understood yet that Elijah really had come in 1836? Or is the misunderstanding about what Elijah brought with him, the keys of the ceiling and everything? It's not clear at all. But it is a question.
I'm also left wondering if there's some connection here to polygamy. In other words, you get to 1843, 1844, polygamy is in full go.
Mm-hmm.
There might be reasons to suggest spiritual connections to heavenly messengers in order to make polygamy more acceptable. And so if people are prepared for the spirit of Elijah, which seals and binds people together, it may be that was the framing that was given to start to tease people into polygamy.
I don't want to get out too far over my skis on this, but the idea of using the sealing power to marry people together, right? Or bind their kids to them is different than where it's usually understood. And I think what it was understood in the earlier part of Mormonism in the 1830s, which is the sealing power is there to seal people up unto eternal life. That's what the sealing power is for. And people were sealed up, congregations were sealed up in Mormonism unto eternal life. So this appears to be sort of a novel kind of twist to the idea of sealing, to make it between man and woman, and woman and woman, like Joseph Smith did.
Yeah, when Smith comes to Kirtland, Elijah's purpose seems to be entirely different than whatever this spirit of Elijah is in Nauvoo in the 40s. So
yes, you can think of a lot of things when you're stuck in prison for 6 months.
That's true. I just want to note again, the quote from the dialogue article is there on the bottom left, and it had empty spots in it. So I'm left assuming that for whatever reason, they're missing, but that the original quote above is accurate.
Now on 22, you mean on the bottom left?
Oh, it is there, but it's like there's a strange line in there with the plus sign and then the space to the left.
Yeah, here's the thing. Okay. And I looked at that too. Here's how you read it. Many have joined the Masonic institution. This seems to have been a stepping stone, a stepping stone or preparation for something else, the true origin of Masonry. Now that plus sign right there is where that plus goes in. In other words, it's sort of almost like a carrot, except it's not a carrot, but that's where it goes in. This I have also seen and rejoice in it. Then continuing, this winter, there was much preaching. I think that's how it's supposed to be.
So somebody edited the original document and inserts, essentially, you either add something in to fill in a void or you cross something out and write above it, for instance.
Yeah, but it could have been an interlineation or it could have been in a margin.
That makes perfect sense. And so in this quote, we have that many are joining Masonry. And I often wonder, there's no way I can show this, but a lot of the early men in the church joined Masonry.
Yeah.
I have to wonder if, in order to teach people that this endowment thing's coming and it's going to steal from Masonry, the best way that I can prep you to fully accept that is to just send you off to join Masonry first. And it says many have joined the Masonic institution. This seems to have been a stepping stone or preparation for something else. I can imagine all the early men in the church who are joining Masonry are leaving the Masonic meeting and putting their arm around other Mormons and trying to get them to be excited to join as well.
Join Masonry, sure. Now, did you say Can I go back here for just a second?
Yeah.
Because you started reading this a little bit in, but I think it answers your question in the first part of this Heber C. Kimball letter to Parley Pratt. I wish he was here so as to feel and hear for yourself. We have received some precious things through the prophet on the priesthood that would cause your soul to rejoice. Can't give them to you in paper. They're not to be written. We have organized the lodge here of Masons. Since we obtained a charter, that was in March, since that there has near 200 been made Masons.
Yeah, I love that. I'm glad that you remembered that beginning to this, because this sets it up that, number one, this originates with Joseph Smith, and they are all talking with each other about this being somehow connected as an ancient form of the priesthood, but it's corrupted.
And I think historically it was March 16th of 1842. Joseph Smith is raised to a third degree Mason. In other words, he gets it all on one day, Mason on site, right? Master Mason on site. And then March, April, May of 1842 is when he first introduces the Mormon version of Masonry, the Temple Endowment. And this letter is being written the following month in June of 1842. So all that tracks.
And this would have been an interesting designation for Smith to make Master Mason in a 1 day period, because this was something that would have taken weeks and maybe months in order to go through all of the steps necessary to be able to reach that level.
Years. Yeah, this isn't Boy Scouts in Utah.
Yeah. But Smith does it in 1 day, and not because he did the work, not because he went through all the rituals and did all the things. And no, they made an exception for him. It was sort of an honorary designation to some degree, no pun intended. Okay, so then we've got that. We went over that. We went over this. This was an interesting one. I originally had a slide where I was just going to tell the audience I couldn't find it. The website, the person had retired. You had to reach out to them and email them and ask for these family histories. And so I did. I emailed them, and I finally got a message back, and they shared with me this document. And so it's just a printout of Richard's family history, volume 3. There's 4 volumes of this. I've got all 4. There's not much more interesting in there. It's a cool thing with AI. You can send a PDF through AI, and you can ask AI to pick out interesting historical data points.
Wow.
And it'll do that. This was
Willard Richard, that Richards family.
This is the Richards family, Willard Richards. Yep. And so they sent this. This is volume 3, March 15th. This day, the Masonic Lodge of Nauvoo was installed on the hill near the temple in the grove. Thousands of people present. 16th. President Joseph and Sidney are initiated by Grand Master Jonas of the Grand Lodge of Illinois. Masonry had, and I'm trying to remember why this is split. Let's go back here. That was page 89. This is 90. Oh, Masonry had its origin in the priesthood. A hint to the wise is sufficient. Go ahead. March 25th. That doesn't have anything to do with it, so that's just there to show that the end of the page. But Masonry had its origin in the priesthood. Again, President Joseph and Sidney are initiated by Grand Master Jonas. Masonry had its origin in the priesthood. A hint to the wise is sufficient.
Right. And you'll notice on the second part, page 90, far right, it says 1843.
Yep.
I don't know why that's there, but it's 1842. I double checked it. What I said originally was correct.
Yeah, this Richards family history keeps a year number going in the top right corner. And regardless, this is long after Kirtland. And so your point about the spirit of Elijah coming is such a strange thing. And maybe one of these days we'll go into that research that you pointed to. I got this far, and there's a bunch more quotes to go into, but there were some thoughts I had that I wanted to share here with the audience. The Masonry approach by Smith is no different than Mark Hoffman. What made Hoffman great was that he took an existing thing that others could agree with or that matched their reality. They can see it in front of them, or it agrees with their sense of the world, and then he builds on it with fiction. that you say this is sorry. So this is Smith, Joseph Smith. What made Hoffman great was that he took an existing thing that others can agree with that matches the reality they can see in front of them, or it agrees with their sense of the world. And then Smith would build on it with fiction or doctrine that he says comes from God. Native Americans or ancient Israelites. Everybody agrees with that for the most part in Joseph Smith's day. It's a running conversation that's happening in the background of frontier America in the early 1800s. The Book of Abraham has real papyri. Joseph bought 4 mummies and he bought papyri. So he has this touchstone for everybody to go like, how can I argue with it? It's real papyri. It's real Egyptian mummies. The Adamic language, from how people perceived language splitting from the Tower of Babel. So everyone can see Masonry in their lived experience. Masonry is tangible as an idea, and many within the general population would have assumed that Masonry was of ancient origin because the myth story surrounding Masonry is an ancient origin story. And so Joseph, all he has to do with this and with every other thing he does is give people something tangible or something they agree with, and then add a bunch of fiction to it. And once you see it, again, we're inside the church and we deal with these problematic issues, and we're taught how to deal with each one faithfully. And so then we help people deconstruct that faithful framing. But really what happens when you step all the way away, RFM, you get 20,000 feet away, and you just realize that Joseph has a pattern of behavior where he takes a thing that people believe, treasure digging, and then he just makes it into a bunch of fiction where he takes people out, he gets paid, he says he can find things, and nothing's ever found. Anyway, and then the third one, Mormonism's claims are demonstrably more easily refuted than most faiths due to 2 reasons. The faith has its own placed importance on record keeping and the modernity of record keeping in the world, in the modern world, which Smith was part of, by only 100 years. You go 100 years earlier, and record keeping is much more dysfunctional. We have this perfect moment in time where Smith tells us keep good records, and we're keeping good records generally at this point compared to sort of the ages before. And I only got like 3 quotes in, and I'm like, hey, I can easily go back to original documents in today's world, and I can easily find things because Joseph Smith emphasized record keeping.
Mm-hmm.
And because we have a modern religion that it was in the age of good record keeping. And as we'll see as we go through this issue is like so many others. The people of the day believed Masonry in the sense that they could see people joining it. They could see they were doing secret stuff, and anybody in the church who went and joined Masonry to begin with is going to see those rituals and go, there's something tangible here. And they're telling me it's an old ancient thing. And then Smith comes along and says, of course it's ancient, but it's corrupted. I'm the guy. I can fix this. Yeah. He fixes the writing on the gold plates by putting them into English. He fixes the Egyptian papyri. He takes the Kinderhook plate. He fixes other people trying to find treasures in the earth because he's the one who can find it.
He fixes the Bible.
He fixes the Bible. Another tangible thing. He fixed the Bible. He's just doing he found a thing that he's good at, fooling people, and then he does it over and over and over again. And every time something comes into his world that people believe is ancient, they have some tangible object, he sees that as a perfect opportunity to play on them.
Yeah, I think Richard Bushman referred to that as Joseph Smith's ability to make something instantly ancient and sacred. And he gave us at least one example, the pile of stones that became the altar that Adam and Eve offered sacrifice on.
There were real rocks. There were real rocks in a place in Missouri. And all he has to do is go, you see these rocks? You see these rocks? This is Adam Ande Amen. This is the place where Adam and Eve made sacrifices to the Lord after getting kicked out of the Garden of Eden.
You see the skeleton with an arrow stuck in it?
Look at that. There's a real skeleton there. It's Zelf. And that's my point, RFM. You're hitting it on the head, which is once you see it, it's the same gimmick over and over and over again. Yeah. All right. This next one here, this is the same one we just read. LDS temple ordinances are the true origin of Masonry.
But it is from BYU Studies. So the church publication now, it's 1979, and it's starting to pop up there.
Yeah, they might have known that he was not a fallen prophet. The Nauvoo Journal of Joseph Fielding. Many have joined the Masonic institution. This seems to have been a stepping stone preparation. So we've already read that one, but there's the cover of that source, volume 19, number 2, winter 1979. By the way, I've got a bibliography that I'll share at the end in the show notes. It might be there already. If anybody wants to go back and read all of these original sources, you can track all of my work down. This is something that you and I have prided ourselves in, is always putting up on the screen the things that we're talking about, helping people make sense that, hey, there are real documents that go way back. There are people who wrote about this, 30 years ago, and then there's the original documents that these things are in. And I think we've always done a better job than the other side of just laying all of it out and letting people understand how much there is and what it points to. So there's that one. Okay. Next here, I'll let you take this one.
President Franklin D. Richards, 1890, in an article called The Temple of the Lord, the Juvenile Instructor, 26 says, quote, certain mystic rites, rites, which are practiced throughout Christendom, claim antiquity with Solomon's temple. I wonder what rites he could be talking about there. I think he's talking about the Masons.
Yeah. That's, by the way, that's another thing that connected with one of the ones we went into here. It was Heber C. Kimball talking about, maybe it was this beginning here on this one. Yep, this one here. I wish you were here so as to feel and hear for yourself. We have received some precious things through the prophet on the priesthood that would cause your soul to rejoice. I cannot give them to you on paper, for they are not to be written. He's already, he's already in Masonry. He already understands the secrecy of Masonry. He is going to keep a good secret. Smith clearly understood that by using Masonry to give people a Mormon ordinance, he could now implement secrecy too.
Yes, that's a good point. By the way, and this association that Heber C. Kimball keeps making between the priesthood and the temple endowment, I think is explained, and the connection with Masonry, all three come together when you're talking about the signs and the tokens and the names, which is where the identicality is the strongest, where you have, for example, and Elder Bednar has said, I'm okay saying this, I'm not going to demonstrate, okay? You have the first token of the Aaronic priesthood. There's a second token of the Aaronic priesthood. There's a first token of the Melchizedek priesthood, a second token of the Melchizedek priesthood. And then there's the name for the first token of the Aaronic priesthood, right? And a name for the second token of the Aaronic priesthood, and so on, and a sign for each one too, except for the fourth one, because that wasn't given, because in Masonry, there's only actually 3 levels. And what Joseph Smith is trying to do is force it into 4.
Well, yeah, if something's corrupted, something got lost, and what they're missing is the 4th step.
Wait until you find out what Joseph Smith restored.
Yeah.
I'll wait till we get into the slide.
I love it. Okay, so certain mystic rites, which are practiced throughout Christendom, claim antiquity of Solomon's temple. So he's making this direct connection with Solomon's temple. And again, one would wonder, where does he get this? This one here is Benjamin Johnson, My Life's Review. And he said, and he was an early member of the church, influential member. He's going to be in a lot of the early stories, but he doesn't play, at least not as far as I can remember, any major role in some major event that we would go over his name on a regular basis. But he's an early member who's rubbing elbows with the leadership and serves in leadership callings himself. So he says, in lighting him to bed one night, in other words, I'm holding a candle and I'm taking Joseph Smith to his room. Okay, I'm lighting the way. So in lighting him to bed one night, he showed me his garments and explained that they were such as the Lord made for Adam from skins, and gave me such ideas pertaining to endowments as he thought proper. He told me Freemasonry, as at present, was the apostate endowment, as sectarian religion was the apostate religion.
And there you have the equation between the two.
Yeah, and if we're to believe Benjamin Johnson, there's no reason why we wouldn't, in light of all the other things we're going to show tonight, including what's already been on the screen, that Joseph Smith explained to him that the garments are symbolic of the skins that were made for Adam and Eve, and that that Freemasonry is an apostate endowment. And these teachings would have originated with Joseph. Now, the question becomes, if you're going to be an apologist for the church, if you're going to try to help people go back to belief, are you going to make the argument that Joseph was just misled himself on something that important, that God just let him be misled? Or would you want to make the argument that no, that's what God said, and now the church has walked away from that? That would seem to be a strange thing to have to reconcile as well.
Yeah, this is a problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
The problem is that the best thing you could, okay, first off, we know, yeah, there's a lot of overlap and a lot of connections between Masonry and Mormonism. Okay, that's past the time when you could deny that. But now that we know that they do, the first argument and the first comments, the first belief about it was that this is restored temple ordinances from Masonry, but that's not important unless Masonry goes back to Solomon's temple.
Yeah, what are you restoring if it's fiction?
Yes, if Masonry doesn't go back to Solomon's temple, then the signs in it and the things that are borrowed have nothing to do with Solomon's temple whatsoever. Is that the problem that you're pointing out, Bill?
Yeah, if Masonry is just hopscotch on steroids, it's just fiction. It's just make-believe. If somebody in the 1600s decided to create a club based on the guilds that existed and the skill sets that were available at the time for people to work at things, a blacksmith, a carpenter, whatever it is, if it's only a creation in the 1600s, it has nothing to do with real Christianity. What the hell is Joseph Smith doing? And so you have to come up with why is he using Masonry under the guise that it's a corrupted form of the endowment?
Okay, I think we're going to have to go back to that theory on, like they have for the Book of Abraham. What's that called again? The catalyst theory?
Yeah.
The catalyst theory, where he was completely wrong. He didn't know what he was talking about. This has nothing to do with Solomon's temple, but he thought it did. And therefore he was able to use subconsciously his mistake in identifying it as going to Solomon's temple to restore a real temple endowment.
But a real temple endowment that doesn't match anything we have on Solomon's temple, Moses' temple, anything about Adam and Eve.
I'm telling you, it was in these storage rooms on the side, on the interior walls, Bill. That's where they were doing them.
Yeah, it's not just a problem to have Masonry be the foundation of Mormon rituals. One has to answer, what are they doing there? And now you have this modern moment where apologists go, well, hold on, there's the endowment, which is the information God is conveying.
Right.
And then there's the presentation of the endowment, which is not the endowment.
Right. In fact, the endowment itself is really only the Masonic parts, only the parts that we stole from Masonry, okay? The actual covenants, the tokens, the signs, and the names, the penalties have since been gone since 1990, okay? But that went along with them. There was a penalty for each of the three, which are the same as the Masonic penalties, like exactly, for the 3 degrees of Masonry. Okay, so that's all I have to say about that slide.
But that's not what Smith is claiming. If an apologist today wants to go, there's the endowment and the presentation of the endowment.
Yes.
One would have to deal with these early quotes honestly. In other words, these contradict that.
Yes. Well, you see, this was never accepted as the doctrine of the church. Of course, the apologist position is not accepted as the doctrine of the church either, because the church really doesn't want to say anything about this.
No. Okay, so comments. I'll take those off the screen. I'll let you read this one. This is a book, The Mormons, Latter-day Saints, the Great. I don't even know what that says there, but a history of
Oh,
the
Lake.
yeah. Oh, the Great Salt Lake. Yeah, sorry. Let me make this a little bigger and see if we can at least get.
It's one of those interminably long titles that they used to have for books like this.
Yeah, but it is the Mormons. Or
And who wrote it?
Uh,
Gunnison? Gunnison.
yeah, Gunnison.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll let you figure out what year it was written here in a second, but what he's writing here is under the faith of the Mormons, but to return to the subject of the priesthood, we are informed they have working signs, and that Masonry was originally of the church and one of its favored institutions to advance the members in their spiritual functions. So this is what he's learning from the Mormons. And it sounds like what these other leaders were saying too. It had become perverted from its designs and was restored to its true work by Joseph, who gave again, by angelic assistance, the key words of the several degrees that had been lost. And when he entered the lodges of Illinois, he could work right ahead of the most promoted, for which, through envy, the Nauvoo Lodge was excommunicated or cut off by the Grand Lodge on account of its own ignorance of the greatest truths and benefits of Masonry. See, it had nothing to do with Joseph Smith stealing the most sacred parts of Masonry in order to include them in his temple endowment. It had nothing to do with that. It's because the Masons in Illinois were so envious of Joseph Smith because he was so much smarter than they were.
Yeah, this is 1852. You can see it there in the bottom left.
Thank you.
Yeah, it had become perverted from its designs and was restored to its true work by Joseph, who gave again by angelic assistance the key words of the several degrees that had been lost. All of the signs, tokens, the way it's worded, this was all given from Joseph as having come from the divine. And it's so strange because all through time, the leaders are so embarrassed by it that every few decades, and in the last 10 years, it's like every 18 months, but every few decades, they go in and go, we're still a little too weird. Let's take a little more out. Let's make it a little more normal. Yeah.
What Joseph Smith did was one of the things that he restored, which was his ultimate act of chutzpah, was that in Masonry, the final and most sacred name that can be received is not known. It has been lost to Masonry. And therefore, they give the name as Mahabone. It is the most sacred name. And the Mahabone is understood. That's not the name itself. Mahabone, not to be confused with Pele Ale, okay? This is Mahabone, and that's from Masonry. And what Joseph Smith appears to have done is he figured out what the real name was, so he doesn't have to use the placeholder anymore. And that is the single most sacred thing that happens in the LDS temple endowment that can only happen at the veil. It's only received at the veil, and it's actually like 3 sentences. But that is Joseph Smith's restoration of the lost name that the Masons only use a placeholder of Mahabone, I believe.
Mahabone sounds a little bit like marrow to the bones, right? Yeah. So I'll just note what you just said is interesting in that it makes perfect sense if you're going to, these guys have a placeholder, but I'm restoring this thing. It's been corrupted. The placeholder, the reason they need a placeholder is because it was such a long thing to remember that they couldn't remember it all. Here is the thing that is being restored. And suddenly you go through those 3 sentences. And it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect
sense.
Yeah. Why? Yeah. It might be a paragraph and a half, but it makes perfect sense that they would have a placeholder for that they would have lost it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting idea.
All right. So the next one here is Brigham Young, Journal of Discourses. So now we're back to the second leader of the church. This is volume 11, I believe. Liverpool, England, 1867. There is another class of individuals to whom I will briefly refer. Shall we call them Christians? They were Christians originally. We cannot be admitted into their social societies, into their places of gathering at certain times and on certain occasions, because they are afraid of polygamy. I will give you their title that you may all know whom I'm talking about. I refer to the Freemasons. They have refused our brethren membership in their lodge because they were polygamist.
By the way, just putting this together, what he's saying in the first part is that Freemasons were Christians originally.
Yes. And it gets more interesting here. They have refused our brethren membership in their lodge because they were polygamist. Well, who was the founder of Freemasonry? They can go back as far as Solomon, and there they stop. There is the king who established this high and holy order. By the way, knowing that Freemasonry goes back to Solomon, that being a cultural story in Joseph Smith's milieu, it's a beautiful story to use to bolster up polygamy, because Solomon is a polygamist. It becomes a great narrative to use. You got secrecy, you got justification for polygamy if you go back to its ancient roots. You got the specialness of being in this secret club that gets these secret signs and secret tokens of this thing that's been restored.
And secret wives too.
It's a great process. It's a great system of rituals to go through if you wanted to manipulate people into secret polygamy.
If you've been on bringing back polygamy, this must have seemed providential.
Yeah. This would have given you some courage to go forward, because you've got something here that you can point to. He says here they can go back as far as Solomon, and there they stop. There is the king who established this high and holy order. Now, was he a polygamist or was he not? If he did believe in monogamy, he did not practice it a great deal, for he had 700 wives, and that is more than I have. Well, by a few. And he had 300 concubines, of which I have none that I know of. Brigham Young is very clear here. He makes the connection easily that Freemasonry, because the temple ordinances come from it, Freemasonry is rooted in Solomon, of course, but also it's a great way to justify polygamy.
Well, in order to do that, you'd have to allow women into the lodge too, which Masons never did.
Yeah.
And which Joseph did.
All right, I'll let you take this one.
This is from Thomas B. H. Stenhouse, The Rocky Mountain Saints, 1873. The Mormon leaders have always asserted that Freemasonry was a degenerate representation of the order of the true priesthood.
Yeah, and you see the cover there. You see the page that shows up on. So there's that.
And that's as late as 1873 that this is not at all hidden. In fact, it's boasted about.
Yeah. This next one will be tough to see. Oh, let me do this. But this is the Encyclopedia of Mormonism, I believe. Temples and Tabernacles. This was, let's see here. Joseph F. No, sorry, I'm wrong one. This is a First Presidency letter. So this is a First Presidency letter. Joseph F. Smith, Anthony H. Lund, John Henry Smith, First Presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. There is no copy of this letter that I could find. Where I did find it was somebody posted it in the comments trying to stick up for this in a Fair Mormon article. So Fair Mormon was having a conversation around it. There's been other mentions of this being talked about in a First Presidency letter, but I didn't have the text of that letter except for this person who put the comment in. And you can go read the letter. I've got a link to that in the end of the show, in the show notes. But just this one part, because of their Masonic characters, the ceremonies of the temple are sacred and not for the public.
Because of their Masonic characters.
Yes, this is the First Presidency telling you that the reason why temple ordinances are secretive is the Masonry. This is the first time I had ever heard that.
Well, it makes sense because it kind of referred to it before. We know what the most sacred parts are, and Elder Bednar told us recently the parts you can't talk about are, the grips or the signs, the tokens, the names, and how to do them. You can't. That's the sacred part. All of those come from Masonry, almost without exception.
Because of their Masonic characters, the ceremonies of the temple are sacred and not for the public. That's the reason the First Presidency gave in a First Presidency letter.
Interesting. To be correct here, I said names, signs, and tokens, not the names. The signs and the tokens and the penalties are all almost completely directly drawn from Masonry.
Yeah. So I thought that was a really cool thing. So the cover of the pamphlet's on the right. If you don't mind, if you'll read this one, the text that needs to be read is the middle part, but also this was a general conference talk by Elder Andrew Jensen, and the first page of that conference talk starts on page 77. That's on the left, covers on the right, but the page where this is taken from, I don't know if it's that or not, but this is the part that needs to connect here with Masonry.
Yeah. Which slide is that, Bill?
Oh, I'm so sorry, my friend. I've got stuff on my other screen here that I'm using as well. It's this here.
There it is. Okay, I was trying to pull up the slide. I think I can read that. This to me, and who is this speaking? Did you already say that? Elder Andrew Jensen?
Yep, Elder Andrew Jensen.
This to me is a most interesting study referring again to the mythology of the Scandinavians and Germans. Man, when did we hear about that last in General Conference? Scandinavians and Germans. What do you find? A religion of good morals. I venture to say that if modern Christianity, corrupted as it is today, is a remnant of the true Christianity introduced by our Savior, if the Freemasonry of today is a remnant and corruption of the true signs and tokens of the priesthood revealed in the days of Solomon, when the Temple of Solomon was built, then it is easy for us to understand and believe that the mythology, blah, 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 blah. So in other words, he's not doing an argument that reaches this conclusion. He's using the fact that the temple, the endowment comes from Freemasonry, right? And Solomon's temple. He's using that as one of his two premises to make his argument about how great the Germanic religions are.
Yeah. That ancient things, as corrupted as they may be, still have some truth to them.
Yes.
Yeah, and we should be grateful they came to us in the form they did, that there was something that could be utilized to be restored.
Right, because apparently Joseph Smith can't do anything in a vacuum.
Yeah.
He has to interact with something that already exists in order to restore it, as opposed to, I don't know, just doing it on the spot without any other kind of influence coming to him except for God.
Yeah. The Word of God there is for sale, 25 cents for your copy of the 83rd Annual Conference. This was April 4th, 5th, 6th of 1913, 83rd Annual General Conference of the Church. That's a general conference talk taught from the pulpit. Here's another one. This is the October 4th, 5th, 6th, 1913. So this is the very next conference.
Mm-hmm.
So this was something that was on their minds. It was spoken of in back-to-back session or back-to-back conferences. It starts with the I assert to you that the evidence given by the Masons themselves proves conclusively that Joseph Smith never knew the first thing of Masonry until years after he had received the visit of Elijah and had delivered to men the keys of the holy priesthood and the ceremonies and ordinances had by us in these sacred temples, and had given the endowments to men long before he knew the first thing pertaining to the ordinances and ceremonies of Masonry. What is Masonry? Why, a fragment of the old truth, coming down perhaps from Solomon's temple of ancient days, and but a fragment, as Christianity is but a fragment of the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. It was only to be had and enjoyed by those who hold the holy priesthood. The prophet Elijah revealed these truths. He possessed them anciently, and he gave them in their perfectness and simplicity and purity to the prophet Joseph Smith. What I think he's saying, RFM, is that the spirit, the visit of Elijah in Kirtland, who delivered to men keys of the holy priesthood, was already the beginnings of sealings and keys and ordinances. And hence we can know Joseph Smith is a true prophet because he's not dealing with Masonry until years later. And yet he's already getting maybe the foundation pieces of eternal sealings and those things as early as Kirtland with the visit of Elijah.
If I'm understanding this person, whoever this person is, correctly, this is the first pushback I'm seeing against the idea that temple endowments derive from Masonry. He's admitting connections, but says there's no causation, because what this person is emphasizing with no evidence is that Joseph Smith, it says it twice, Joseph Smith had no knowledge of Masonry before he gave us the temple ordinances. Now, that's obviously not correct.
No.
This is 1913. This talk is being given, and it may be more wishful thinking than anything else. But this is the argument. Now, look, it says at the very beginning, I assert to you that the evidence given by Masons themselves proves conclusively that Joseph Smith never knew the first thing of Masonry until years after he had received the visit of Elijah and had delivered to men the keys of the holy priesthood and the ceremonies and ordinances had by us in these sacred temples. So yeah. I think that's what he's saying, but he's also throwing in the spirit of Elijah. Because the spirit of Elijah comes about, I think, in the temple. Once again, it's that the fact that it's restored in 1836, but it doesn't seem to become activated or important until the temples are being constructed, endowed.
And as you point out, what happened in Kirtland around the visit of Elijah is a night and day difference in terms of how it was contextualized when it happened, what it was used for, what they did with it, because they didn't do any ordinances. They might have done some washing of the feet in the upper rooms of the Kirtland Temple, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't doing an endowment as later Mormons would think of it. And so it's like he knows that the cart came before the horse, or the horse came before the cart. But meanwhile, we would all look at this with hindsight, delving into the history and go, they don't have to be necessarily connected originally. Smith can be trying to do something special in the 1830s in Kirtland, and then later on combine it with something else when he starts taking on Masonry.
Yeah, I think this is an important address because I think it shows that from October, I'm not saying that this person speaks for the whole church, but this is definitely the denial mode that the church is going into. There is no connection between Masonry and the endowment.
Yeah, and this is the first one where there is, but there isn't. There is a connection, but there isn't.
There's a similarity, but there's no causal connection between the two.
Yeah, it's evidence that Joseph was inspired, not evidence that he took from something.
Right. And how could Joseph Smith have known what was in the Masonic temple when he didn't know anything about Masonry before he gave us the endowment? Obviously, he was inspired.
Yeah. All right. This one, if you don't mind, if you'll read this, it's that part at the top right, but the quote is down below in big, so you can use that. But
I'll use that.
Yeah, this is Franklin D. Richards' Rutger Clawson Diary, 4th of April, 1899.
Okay. If you can help me with the live chat for a second when I get there.
Yep.
Joseph the prophet was aware that there were some things about Masonry which had come down from the beginning. Okay. Joseph takes it back to Adam and Eve. I think there's a strain, at least one within Masonry, that takes it back to Adam and Eve as well, which had come down from the beginning, and he desired to know what they were, hence the lodge. So Joseph Smith is aware, this is before he builds the lodge, some things about Masonry which had come down from the beginning, and he desired to know what they were, hence the lodge. So it's based on his awareness that there's a connection already and that Masonry comes down from the beginning, that he wants to join the lodge so he can find out what these things are, investigate it himself, and figure out which are the things that come down from the beginning, apparently. The Masons admitted some keys of knowledge appertaining to Masonry were lost. Joseph inquired, like Mahabone, Joseph inquired of the Lord concerning the matter, and he revealed to the prophet true Masonry as we have it in our temples. Owing to the superior knowledge Joseph had received, the Masons became jealous and cut off the Mormon lodge.
Again, apologists today say Masonry has nothing to do with God's endowment. It was just the skeletal system of the endowment that Joseph used in order to convey all of the truths of the endowment. That it was a tool in order to show the endowment, but it has no real connection to any of God's word on what the endowment has to have in it. But that's not what's being said here. This is Rutger Clawson's diary, where he is noting that Joseph inquired of the Lord concerning the matter, and God revealed to the prophet that this was true Masonry that we have in our temples, owing it to the superior knowledge that Joseph had received. The Masons admitted some keys of knowledge pertaining to Masonry were lost. Joseph Smith is the restorer. He's the one putting it back together. This is very different than what apologists want to say. And what apologists don't want to do is they don't want to try to reconcile their current position with these quotes. And they're overwhelming.
Yes. And if this is just the presentation of the endowment versus the endowment itself, why is it that the parts that were taken from Masonry end up being the most sacred parts of the endowment that we're not allowed to tell anybody else?
They're the reasons we can't tell anybody else.
Right. You're right. The very reasons.
All right. This one here is, I found this in an article by Edward Ashment, The LDS Temple Ceremony, Historical Origins and Religious Value. And the part of the article down below, I'll read that here in a second, but we'll start at the top left. Modern Masonry is a fragmentary presentation of the ancient order established by King Solomon, from whom it is said to have been handed down through the centuries. That he was not sorry there was such a similarity because of the fact that the ordinances and rites revealed to Joseph Smith constituted a reintroduction upon the earth of the divine plan inaugurated in the Temple of Solomon in ancient days. Masonry is an apostasy from the ancient early order, just as so-called Christianity is an apostasy from the true church of Christ. This is Elder Melvin J. Ballard. This was originally in the Salt Lake Herald, December 29th, 1919. This is another one where I ran into an issue. It is quoted in this article, the LDS Temple Ceremony, Historical Origins and Religious Values. I can't find the original paper. When I go to look up that quote, the only place it shows up is in S.H. Godwin's book, Mormonism and Masonry, Origins, Connections, and Coincidences Between Mason and Mormon Temple Templar Ritual. I can't find it in any primary source material. Maybe the archives have it on microfilm somewhere, but outside of secondary citations, I can't track it down. So I can't confirm the quote. I'm not even sure who the he is, although I think he would be, I think God in this instance, right? From who said it handed down through the centuries that he was not sorry. Oh, the he must be Elder Melvin J. Ballard, but I can't even confirm that. I don't know what was cut out with the ellipses either. There were some ellipses in the original. So you have to take that with a grain of salt, but I don't have any reason to doubt the quote. It's just in an old newspaper that I couldn't find a copy of.
By the way, it's the Mormons who would link Solomon with a polygamy, and that's why it is so closely associated with the temple and was then, especially. Of course, the Masons did not make that association. They put it with Solomon's temple because Solomon was associated with wisdom.
Yeah, but Joseph's doing polygamy. He needs it for a different reason.
Yeah.
And you know, it's smart of him to see these connections. It's it's what we give him credit for being good at, is he has the ability to take different things from different places and put them together in some coherent way. And when he sees Masonry and he hears them tell him this is an ancient thing, and again, his dad was a Mason. I believe his brother Alvin was a Mason. So while he didn't participate in it at the time,
Hiram was.
yeah, the early family were Masons as well. Joseph would have caught some of this myth story, this connection to Solomon, and he would have gone, oh, I've been wanting to do this polygamy thing. And Masonry gets people to keep secrets, and it's connected to polygamy. If I use the Solomon story that way, I better get restoring. Anyway, there's that. Okay, so this is another book, Mormonism, Masonry. Would you mind reading this one?
By E. Cecil McGavin, one of my favorite authors. Sure, he says yes. This is from his book. It says the church historian's office. Well, let's read it and see what it is. Yes, there may be some similarities in the rituals of the Mormons and the Masons, but those few likenesses, there's a ton, in a vast realm of ritual cannot be explained by the fact that Joseph Smith attended a few meetings of the Masonic fraternity. He barely knew what was going on there. He was given all the names, all the signs, everything the first day on March 16th, 1842. He was made a master Mason on site. He got everything. He got all the handshakes, the grips, the tokens. He got all the signs. He knew it all. And these substantial overlap to in excess of 90% with the LDS temple. Okay. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. In the light of the evidence supplied by Masonic historians, the conclusion is forced upon us that some of the features of the ritual once administered in Solomon's temple have persisted in Masonry. Yes, we are going to accept those Masonic historians without any pushback or question because they're telling us what we want to hear. Since some of the Masonic ritual has descended from Solomon's time, continuing my argument from a faulty premise, altered and corrupted by the passing centuries, should one be surprised to find a few similarities when the temple ritual is again established? Well, no, we wouldn't if that were the case. Unfortunately, it's not. If the facts were available and the original source is extant, it would doubtless, by the way, whenever you hear the word doubtless, it's a person who's arguing a losing proposition. That's just been my experience. Anytime you have to buttress your argument with doubtless, it's because the facts don't support it. If the facts were available and the original source is extant, it would doubtless be apparent that everything in the ritual of the Mormons that the Masons say was taken from their ceremonies dates back to Solomon's time. So the only things that the Mormons stole from the Masons is the real essential parts that go all the way back to Solomon. And we know that because those are the parts that the Mormons stole. Perfect circle, doubtless.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Church Historian's Office, 1938 to 1970, E. Cecil McGavin. I don't know much about the background of this book, but it is still available on Amazon if somebody wants that one.
I think this is the book that I spent that entire evening up in my erstwhile father-in-law's law office on the 4th of July back in the 80s, photocopying page by bloody page.
Yeah, but by the way, I'll just note that in this, I've often argued, or at least set up a thought experiment that Joseph Smith had photographic memory. This would be an indication of that. Smith didn't spend a ton of time in Masonry. He was made Grand Master Mason, 33 degree in a day. He seemed to have taken the information in, soaked it up like a sponge.
Yeah, but it doesn't take a photographic memory. So anyway, he's got 2 months and he uses those to come up with the endowment, which is basically it's the signs and the tokens from Masonry. It's the story from the Garden of Eden and the fall of man. Not too hard. The creation and then the Garden of Eden and the fall of man. And with a little bit of Book of Abraham in there as far as the gods, because it really leans heavy into the plurality of gods, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And then we come to, I'll let you read this one. This is a reason for faith. This is a picture from my personal copy. This was Laura Hales,
Right.
who's deceased now. Laura Hales, the former spouse of Brian Hales. But this particular article was what she did was she was just the editor. She asked a bunch of apologists to each write a section dealing with a troublesome issue. And it was Stephen Harper, our good First Vision expert, who took on this a Freemasonry issue and wrote a section in the book about this.
This first sentence is horrible. It gives me hives just looking at it. He says, it requires a logical leap. It requires a logical leap to bridge the evidentiary gap between similarity, which was obvious to those who knew both Masonry and the endowment, and dependence, which is assumed not known. So in other words, just because Joseph Smith gets made a master mason on site in March of 1842, and then 2 months later introduces an endowment that has all this stuff in it for Masonry, we should not conclude that that's where Joseph Smith got it from. That's what he's saying. He's saying, well, we don't know that's where he got it from. Oh, come on. Come on. That's the kid with all the crumbs coming down their face saying, you don't know that I ate the cookies. He says some people, I'm sorry, Bill?
No, go ahead.
He writes, some people reason that Joseph Smith initiated men and women into the endowment ordinances after he was initiated into Freemasonry. That's true. Therefore, the temple rituals derived from Masonry. Well, almost certainly, those parts that are identical to Masonry came from Masonry. I think he's trying to change that a bit, though, in a surreptitious way. One problem, and a bit of a straw manish way. One problem in this theory is that Freemasonry itself borrowed much of its ritual and ceremony from elements preserved since antiquity. Who says? What is he talking about? He doesn't know that. Unless he's trying to say that there are similarities. I mean, demonstrate, please. Okay, but he is alleging that Freemasonry itself borrowed much of its ritual and ceremony from elements preserved since antiquity. He's still trying to say it goes back to Solomon. Shame on you, Stephen Harper. Shame on you. He says there's I'm sorry, Bill.
His first sentence, too, just back to that for a moment. It requires a logical leap to bridge the evidentiary gap between similarity, which was obvious to those who knew both Masonry and the endowment, and dependence, which is assumed not known. That argument would want to steer clear of all these early quotes that we're sharing. Because they are early leaders saying there was a dependence on Masonry for what we have in the endowment.
Good point. Then he says there is ample similarity and difference, not only between Freemasonry and LDS temple ordinances, but in many other ancient and more modern stories and rituals as well. I don't know what this has to do with anything, except that he wants to come to this conclusion, which is you can't do it. He says disentangling the complex relationships between them is not possible. Bullshit, Stephen Harper. Come on, man. That is lame. What you're trying to say is, oh, you can't do it. You can't look at all the different signs and the tokens, okay? And the penalties and the 5 points of fellowship through the veil. And you can't look at all the different kinds of symbols that are in common between them, including the freaking beehive, okay? Not to mention, you know, the compass and the square. You can't look at those and make a connection that this is where Joseph Smith got this stuff from, is from Freemasonry. You can't do that because it's not possible to disentangle the complex relationships between them. Give me a break.
That would
and
be
he says, and should not be oversimplified. But the main part is he's saying it's not possible, so you can't do it. So therefore, nanny boo boo, we consider the matter closed. You cannot say that Joseph Smith got this from Freemasonry when any reasonable person would look at the evidence and say, obviously he did.
Yeah, he's saying that because there's 50 things present. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. There's 50 things present in the endowment. Even though one of them seems to clearly be the plagiarism of Masonry, because there's 49 other things there, there's no way to do that.
Well, yeah, except when we're talking about the signs and the tokens, okay, and the penalties, more than 90% is from Masonry. I'm not talking about the narrative.
Yeah.
The narrative is different. I think he's trying to confuse the reader.
Yeah. Again, the reason I'm pausing is because I'm trying to imagine how he would deal with these early quotes. Like Stephen Harper is no dummy. He's been to a good school. He's read some good books.
He gets paid to be a dummy.
He knows these early quotes. If he doesn't, then he shouldn't be doing what he does, because he should know these quotes, and he at least knows of some of them. And hence, how would he deal with the early leaders of the church saying that Joseph Smith told them that there was a dependence of one on the other? That even if they're given, even if Joseph Smith is receiving a revelation from God and not getting his information from Masonry directly, all of the early leaders say what Joseph told us was that what he gave us as a temple endowment was a restored form of the corrupted endowment that was right next door over there at Masonry.
Stephen Harper is a church historian who ignores church history in order to defend the church.
Yeah. Yeah, you would think historians would want to talk about the issues and field the hard questions, but those guys do not. All right, the next one here.
By the way, Stephen, if you want to come on the show anytime, just let me know. I think you know Bill.
Yeah.
You know Steve, right?
I've hung out with him for a few minutes. He would know how to reach me if he needed to.
Okay, so reach out to Bill. We'll have you on the show, okay?
We'd love to go over these quotes and juxtapose them against your ideas and let you help us understand how you reconcile those.
Why you didn't include those? Why you didn't tell your readers about them?
Yeah. That's right. A historian would have put the quotes on the pages and then explained, this is why I think the way I do is because here's the quotes that substantiate that. Yeah.
The only reason I want to be a little bit tentative about this is because I have not read his entire thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't read his entire piece, but I don't know how he could make that argument that we did read if he's including those other quotes anywhere in the paper.
No, he wouldn't be able to do that. Okay, this one here, exploring the connection between Mormons and Masons. This is written by Matthew Brown. And all he's doing is he's referring to other statements. Those are the statements that we've already shown. He puts them in the book and then says something about them. So this is what he says. He says, following are 7 statements by Latter-day Saints, and that's at least some of, if not all of the quotes that we've gone through before here. Following are 7 statements by Latter-day Saints that establish the viewpoint of some 19th century Mormons with regard to the origin of Freemasonry. He distances these quotes from Joseph Smith. He is saying some early Mormons said some things. We shouldn't take those things too seriously. Following are 7 statements by Latter-day Saints that establish the viewpoint of some 19th century Mormons with regard to the origin of Freemasonry. The first statement comes from Joseph Smith's scribe, Willard Richards, and was written by him on or very near the day when the prophet was raised to the degree of Master Mason. So when Kimball says that Masonry is a degenerative form of a truth that Joseph Smith is restoring, what Matt Brown is saying here is that happens very near in chronological order to Joseph Smith experiencing the rituals of Masonry. And hence, come on, guys, like we can't believe that's not connected. That doesn't make any sense. He said the statements by Heber C. Kimball and Benjamin F. Johnson, a reminiscent account, reflect the thought of Joseph Smith on the matter. The message behind all of these.
Notice that is important.
Yeah.
He says the statements of Heber C. Kimball and Benjamin F. Johnson reflect the thought of Joseph Smith on the matter. So they're saying what they heard Joseph Smith say.
It would be ridiculous for them to have a false view, both in light of Smith teaching all of this stuff at the same time. They clearly got it from Joseph Smith. He's the guy to expound on these things, no one else. The message behind all of these statements is consistent. There are similarities between Freemasonry and the Mormon endowment because Masonry is a product of apostasy or degeneration from a priesthood-based prototype. Latter-day Saints possess the authentic version.
Right.
Yeah. This is what Stephen Harper has to deal with that he doesn't. All right. now we get to the church. This is, I don't want to call it a gospel topic essay, but it's sort of one of those things where they go into Masonry. Would you mind reading this one?
History of Masonry on the church website. There are no known Masonic documents before about 1400, period. Okay, just stop right there because that you don't have to say anything more. That kind of blows the whole thing open, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The earliest records tell a story of Masonry originating during Old Testament times.
Solomon.
In other words, the earliest records show a story that Masonry originated during Old Testament times. It didn't actually. The oldest surviving minutes of Masonic lodges date to about 1600 and indicate that the organization was primarily concerned with regulating the trade of stone masonry. Later minutes show that the lodges were gradually overtaken by men who were not stonemasons. These members transformed the organization from a trade guild into a fraternity.
So here's the church saying it's not ancient in terms of evidence.
Well, they want to have it both ways, okay? They say earliest is 1400, but they say the earliest records tell a story of masonry originating during Old Testament times.
Yeah, they're leaving the reader free to make their own conclusions.
They're leaving the door open to Solomon's temple.
While being honest of sorts and trying to say, well, we told people it didn't go any further back than 1400. There's no records before 1600, but maybe you can decide, maybe. So there's that. Encyclopedia of Mormonism. This is Kenneth W. Godfrey. The prophet Joseph Smith suggested that the endowment, by the way, this is him acknowledging it as the part of the Encyclopedia of Mormonism. The prophet Joseph Smith suggested that the endowment in Freemasonry in part emanated from the same ancient spring. Stephen Harper said you couldn't make that connection because there's so much in the endowment that we can't be sure that they're connected this way.
You're right. He did.
Thus, some Nauvoo Masons thought of the endowment as a restoration of a ritual only imperfectly preserved in Freemasonry and viewed Joseph Smith as a master of the underlying principles and allegorical symbolism. He points to the same Eber C. Kimball to Parley Pratt, June 17th, 1842, Church Archives. The philosophy and major tenets of Freemasonry are not fundamentally incompatible with the teaching, theology, and doctrine of the Latter-day Saints. Both emphasize morality, sacrifice, consecration, and service. Both condemn selfishness, sin, and greed. Furthermore, the aim of the Masonic ritual is to instruct. Furthermore, the aim of Masonic ritual is to instruct to make truth available so that man can follow it.
So what he did there in that last part was he made it so general that it could match almost anything. And he found the similarities between Freemasonry and the Mormon temple.
The connections are stunning, aren't they, RFM?
They're amazing, actually. Morality. And I think when he went to sacrifice and consecration, he was using Mormon words to describe Masonic stuff so that it would sound more impressive.
Yeah. All right. So there's that. We're back to the church's website. This was a talk by Mark E. Peterson, Why Mormons Build Temples. This was 3 separate paragraphs. So if you don't mind, I'll ask you to read this. This is the first paragraph on the left, and then the second and third on the top right to bottom right.
Mark Peterson, one of my favorite apostles, shook his hand in Japan.
Nice.
It has been a multi-billion-dollar investment. Multi-million-dollar, excuse me. It's probably back in the 70s or 60s.
It's multi-billion now.
Yeah, it has been a multi-million-dollar investment. What on earth would that be? The members of the church have built in good times and bad, in the depths of poverty and affliction, always doing so in a spirit of worship and gratitude, for they were obeying the will of God. Latter-day Saints declare that through the prophet Joseph Smith, the fullness of the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ was restored to the earth. That fullness meant completeness. All things pertaining to the gospel anciently were given to men in modern times by means of this restoration. By the way, can we put this particular statement in contradiction to President Nelson talking about the ongoing restoration? because Marky Peterson says it was already all restored.
Yeah, the fullness meant completeness. The fullness of the gospel had been restored. It's already been done.
This is the Mormonism I grew up with.
And just a note too, RFM, this, if you remember this was that special edition ensign. It was thicker than the others. It was the temples.
With all the pictures and the fold out and everything. The centerfold.
Every article was about temples. Yeah, the centerfold. It was a big spire on that. Yeah. Big steeple. So
Kurt Reynolds.
Yeah.
He had quite the spire, that guy.
All right. Second and third paragraph.
In biblical times, Marky Peterson says, sacred ordinances were administered in holy edifices for the spiritual salvation of ancient Israel. See? It was going on in Solomon's temple, I told you. The buildings thus used were not synagogues or any other ordinary places of worship. They were specially constructed for this particular purpose. We have no evidence of this whatsoever, but dang it, that's not going to stop Marky Peterson. They were specially constructed for this particular purpose. While the people traveled in the wilderness, they used a portable tabernacle. Yes, this tabernacle is called the temple of the Lord, and it was there, for instance, that Samuel's mother went to pray. Okay? And what else? Do initiatories? When they ceased their wanderings and obtained a stable government, they built a glorious temple in Jerusalem to take its place. Okay. Following the pattern of biblical...
I'll get that
little help here. Thank you. Following the pattern of biblical days, the Lord again in our day has provided these ordinances for the salvation of all who will believe, and directs that temples be built in which to perform those sacred rites.
Yeah, he doesn't mention Masonry specifically, but he's clear that this is an ancient thing that Joseph Smith had restored. He's noting that these rites are the thing that God gave Joseph Smith. There isn't any separation of the endowment and the presentation of the endowment. It's just a note to viewers. Mormon apologists always have to come in after the fact, with hindsight now being 2020, realizing that early leaders, what they said can't be defended when it comes to the evidence. And then they change the narrative to, whatever those early quotes were around whatever that early problematic issue is that you're asking me about. We acknowledge the evidence, and we no longer believe in these things the way the early members said Joseph Smith taught it. Yeah.
Joseph Smith is going the way of the dodo in Mormonism.
Yeah. We get this contributor monthly magazine. There's a couple of these in here. The Contributor was an independent magazine founded in 1879 by Junius F. Wells, who also organized the Young Men's Mutual Improvement Association. So this was the first rendition of the Young Men's Organization. Later edited by Abraham Cannon, it ran until 1896. It served the young men and young women. Its purpose was to engage the youth of the church and develop their literary talents. It had, history, biographies, gospel topics, letters from church leaders, conference reports, lesson outlines, etc. This was the November 1890 volume number 12. It says number 1 there at the end of there on the right. The ceremonies of investiture of the different orders of knighthood were quite varied, and in some respects were often suggestive of an origin, the same as ceremonies of the Masonic order. In the perverted ordinances of the gospel practiced by early Christians after the priesthood had been taken away. And so he's just noting the similarities in various ritual systems, and drawing conclusions about Masonry and about the rituals of knighthood that would have it being a distorted, true thing that had just degenerated.
The part I like the best about the temple endowment is when you stay up all night long and the next day you get your spurs.
Yeah. I dub the...
Yeah, and you do the whole thing with the sword, everything. It's exactly the temple endowment. See, this is the problem that Mormonism has, okay? Mormonism has this idea that Adam and Eve at the very beginning got everything Mormon, right? Both the stuff that we teach outside, and they also had the endowment and all this other stuff. And then it got degenerated. And then it got spread throughout the earth, which means that we can look, honestly, we can look at any country at any time and any people, no matter where they are on the earth, because they all descended from Adam and Eve, and they're all corrupted versions. And we can find any similarities in any of them, and those are seen as evidence that Mormonism is true.
Mormonism is everywhere if you'll just look for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Gospel Through the Ages by Milton R. Hunter, I believe, is a book that was based on that thesis. I actually had it at one point. I'm sure I still do somewhere. It was like an original edition. I got it through a used bookstore because it wasn't readily available. Does anybody out there know that book, The Gospel Through the Ages, where basically he looks in different places and finds things that are similar to Mormonism, and hey, the church is true. Like no other church could do that, you know?
Yeah. This is the improvement era, June 1900. If you don't mind, let's alternate every other paragraph here because this is kind of long. And I'll let you start with that top left one, sort of middle left one. If or let me say,
I'll do my best.
Top one.
The strange monument on Salisbury Plains. Thinks Mr. T somebody. Mr. T. When was this again?
This is 1900 improvement era.
That was maybe the 1980s. I can't read behind that. Is there any, there's probably no way to get that out of there. What if we put our, let me see here. If we did something like that. The strange monument on Salisbury Plains thinks Mr. T. Andrew, okay, FGS, would seem to betoken the commencement of the Masonic history of Britain. So, okay, here's the thing. Now they're saying that Stonehenge is the beginning of Masonic history in Britain. Yeah, probably not. It stands upon the open plain about 6 miles northwest from Salisbury. The appearance, even at half a mile distance, is, he says, strangely weird, as opposed to unstrangely weird, and imposing. It is situated near the crown of a gentle slope, and advancing nearer to it, the beholder with the least imagination becomes more strongly impressed as to its origin and design. For, however, one may be struck with the magnitude of those masons of stone, which...
For however one may be struck by the magnitude of those masses of stone, which...
Yeah, so it's basically introducing the idea of Stonehenge in this paragraph, and it being the origin of Freemasonry in Britain.
Yeah, I think it goes on about Stonehenge. So I step away there to get to back where it starts to touch on this again. Although Stonehenge is probably one of the earliest instances of operative masonry in this country, it is curious how little can be said about this remarkable collection of stones with certainty. Circles, cromlechs, other relics having a great resemblance to each other are to be found in various parts of the world. And so same thing you said, RFN, that this is just, you can see the truth everywhere when you look for it. And Sir W. Ousley describes a circle and a single upright stone, which he saw in Persia as uncommonly like those at Stonehenge. He concludes they were
Druidical.
Druidical, yeah.
Yeah, so they got Druids in Persia. Could happen, I don't know. What then is the connection between Freemasonry and operative masonry? Between the former and the phenomenon of Stonehenge? Much in every way, replies Mr. Andrew. And to demonstrate which, he observes that masonry, according to the general acceptance of the term, is founded on the principles of geometry. I thought it was founded on the principles of sacrifice and consecration and all that good stuff. No, it's founded on the principles of geometry, and is directed to the convenience and enlightenment of the world. Masonry assumes the form of a noble science, distinguished by a series of peculiar rites and ceremonies, indicated by significant emblems, which are alone intelligible to the fraternity. It forms a universe, in other words, a secret. It forms a universal language which is understood by Masons of every nationality under heaven.
I'll just say here, remember, this is the improvement era. This is the, quote, this is their word, not mine, quote, organ of the Young Men's Mutual Improvement Associations. this is to the young people of the church. Seems to be an article sort of prepping them to recognize that Masonry has something truthful to it that you might experience sometime soon. Sort of prepping people for what's about to come for them as they grow up and get the endowment. After it continues here, after inspecting Stonehenge, probably none will deny the evidence of much geometrical art and also some, perhaps not a little, knowledge of astronomy. Ancient Masonry and operative Masonry are believed to have been one, that is to say, wherever the company of operative Masons was found, such was the respectability, and I'll continue because it's continuing the sentence, respectability and authority of that art that invariably a lodge with its signs and tokens followed. In the erection of Stonehenge and similar circles, if the descendants of Japheth had not forgotten art and science, they would not have permitted their signs and tokens of Freemasonry to become buried in oblivion. The probability is that the one would be traditionally forceful to them as the other. He's just saying if these guys knew what they were doing, they would have respected these things. There was something special here, and they wouldn't have lost touch with this stuff. And he's setting up the young men to see that if they ever run into Masonry and Mormonism, if they ever get that thought, they've got something that they've been inoculated with years earlier.
Yeah, it goes back to Stonehenge, at least in England.
Here's another improvement era. This is October 1929, number 12.
You know what's interesting about that?
Please.
Stock market crash.
Yeah, look at that.
I just think about the people writing these articles and putting this together for publication, and I wonder whether it came out before or after.
Yeah, there wasn't any prophetic thing going on there, was there?
No, really. Maybe there's an article in there about get your money out of the stock market right now.
No, there's not. And this one comes from Temple Ceremonies, James H. Anderson. Do you want to read as much of that as is interesting, and then I'll pick up when if you tank out.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it was probably before, because Black Monday was October 28th, 1829, so at the end of the month. Little knowing what was on the horizon. In Solomon's Temple. I'm sorry?
They didn't see around corners here.
Not a bit. I wish. In Solomon's Temple, there were certain precincts which only the high priest was permitted to enter, right, the Holy of Holies, for participation in the rites pertaining thereto. In the temple referred to, those rites and ceremonies consisted of oral instruction and illustrating symbols indicating the progress of mankind. They told of the beginning of men's occupancy of the earth, of the instructions from God, and the conditions and rewards pertaining thereto. They told also of the efforts of the evil power to draw mankind away from the precepts of deity. They explained how observance of those precepts brought peace and joy and happiness throughout the ages, and how disregard thereof brought the opposite result. These rites and ceremonies, consisting of oral and symbolic instruction, constitute the temple ceremonies.
In Solomon's Temple, this ritual contained historical record only up to the time of its administration. As a history in symbol and recital, it could contain no more. Beyond this, there are the sacred promises for the future, as given in prophetic symbol and prophetic promise. The chief of these pertain to the anticipated resurrection from the dead and the eternal judgment, which awarded to mankind the result of their actions based on their conformity to God's law. He is writing the basic principles of what's happening in the endowment into the rituals of Solomon's Temple without any evidentiary basis to do so.
Absolutely none. And he's going on and making the argument that because this obviously must be the case, then there are different permutations of the temple endowment, because obviously something in Solomon's day can only relate to the stuff that's historical to Solomon, right? Because we don't really have prophets who see around the corners. But they can only be historical, so it's not going to be talking about the resurrection. Only the ones after the resurrection talk about the resurrection, and God knows when it is that a Protestant minister shows up.
Yeah, yep. The chief of, back to this, says the chief of these pertained to the anticipated resurrection from the dead in the eternal judgment, which awarded to mankind the result of their actions based on their conformity to God's law as they had opportunity, which comes in great measures from their diligence in adopting that conformity, that you will get in line and be a Solomonite in the same way that the rest of us are telling you have to. In other words, conformity. He's saying that what Solomon's temple was designed to do was to gain conformity of those who go through it, because he's setting up all Mormons who go through the temple ceremonies to make covenants and promises that they will conform to. He says, it is said that what is known as the Masonic order has rites based on ceremonies in Solomon's temple. Yeah, no, it doesn't, but nice try. All right, do you mind taking that last one?
Yes, that order is a fraternal organization, not a religious one. So that's Masonry. If it happens to have 1, 2, or 3 of the religious symbols of Solomon's temple ceremonies, in other words, if it has that much that's not corrupted, then so far as accurate, those must be part of the true religious ritual. There it is. That fraternal order, by the way, it's more like 15 or 20. That fraternal order has the right to keep its ritual sacred and secret.
And on the next slide is just the actual document of the pages inside that improvement era. So if anybody wants to just double check that that's in there, I know it is, but if somebody doubts that what we had there was part of this, you can read that whole thing. It's in its entirety on the screen now. The next thing we've got here is another improvement era. This is volume 24. It looks like November. I can't quite see that, but maybe 1920 something. And this was in an article titled "As Rachel Wept." And the first page of that is on the left, but the quote that we want there is the top right. While the big idea of the religion was temple service for the dead, a godhood and various heavenly figures who served the Godhead, we have them still in our heavens as St. Peter, keeper of the gates, the recording angel, etc. But I teased my Jewish informant a bit. I told him I was sure the Egyptian ideas were older than the gospel of Abraham. But he caught me up quick. He knew his grounds. He referred me to Abbott's History of Masonry, a new book all of our people should read. It traces Masonic symbols to their sources, and it credits the Egyptian symbols and teachings of the Hebrews.
To the Hebrews.
Yeah, who carried them into Egypt with them. What a shock it must be to be breasted to find things working out this way. In other words, this is the evidence, folks. This is the ancient symbols found in Masonry that date back to Egyptian ideas, Egyptian concepts, and hence we all should be excited to learn that the evidence is coming forward to show that we were right about these claims we made.
And the key being the last part is that it was the Hebrews who brought them to the Egyptians.
Yeah.
So this is a way of trying to argue, of course, the same thing, which is that the Masonic parts of the Masonic rites that are taken by the Mormons go all the way back to the Hebrews in Solomon's day. And maybe even before that. I don't know.
These next two are a little long as well. So this is the juvenile instructor.
And I say I don't know because if you're going back to the Hebrews going into Egypt, that happened substantially before Solomon.
Right. We have to deal with the fact that at least in some places, LDS leadership taught this went all the way back to Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve were doing the endowment, the coats of skins again.
You couldn't stop them from doing the endowment. They were doing it all the time.
They were doing the endowment way back with Adam and Eve. Solomon did it before Solomon, and after Adam and Eve, it was being done by the Hebrews who took it into Egypt. This is ancient, folks, and again, it's just a strange thing that we've had to walk away from this completely, and that we've allowed apologists to walk away completely without having to deal with these quotes that put all of this teaching in the mouth of Joseph Smith.
The ordinances we receive in the temple are necessary for exaltation. In every dispensation, all the major 7, when God has had the fullness of his church upon the earth, he has had temples He's had the temple rights. Otherwise, nobody could be exalted.
Yeah. These are the most sacred ordinances in the gospel of Jesus Christ that gives you the signs and tokens, the keywords to be able to pass this, as Brigham Young said, to pass the sentinels who guard the gates. You can enter into your rest. Well done, thou good and faithful servant.
Give them the signs and tokens and gain your exaltation in spite of earth and hell. By the way, it's Joseph Smith who had said that the temple endowment was had in all previous dispensations because it was essential that all mankind be saved on the same principles.
Yeah, that's why the ordinances can't be changed, is we all have to be saved on those same rituals, those same keywords, those same tokens and signs. Yeah. Then they
I'm
changed.
glad I remember mine.
Yeah, then they changed them. Well, I'll be lucky. There's always somebody there to help you, to whisper in your ear, let you know how to get through.
I'm not going to help you, Bill.
Okay, well, shame on me.
I'll help you.
Nice.
It's other people I won't help.
All right, so the next one here, juvenile instructor, October 1st, 1879. That's the front page of the juvenile instructor of the issue we're talking about. The article that we want to read is this George Q. Cannon editorial thoughts. The very particular section here is on the far right, this big long section. So do you want to read that until you get tired, and then I'll take over from there?
Well, I can see why it is that Joseph Smith's eyes got tired looking at that stone in the hat all the time.
Yeah, this is I guess I could have put it on 3 pages or something, but this is what it is.
I wonder how big the writing on the stone was. Maybe it was just really tiny.
Yeah.
Okay, Professor Rudolph, a German, has studied the Aymara, Aymara, Aymara tongue, a language in vogue before the Spanish conquest. So this is a language over there in South America, and which was spoken by the Incas and their subjects in Peru. This Aymara language is spoken now by, is that 8 million?
8 million, yes.
8 million of the Aboriginal stock. This gentleman, Rudolph, has discovered that there is an unmistakable affinity. Oh my Lord. Oh my Lord. This guy is doing Brian Stubbs crap before Brian Stubbs. He's going to say that the language in the, this is so lame, that the language in Peru, this Aymara language, right? It's just like Hebrew. Oh my gosh, how could that be? The answer is because it's not. Oh my gosh, and it's not with Brian Stubbs either. Colby and I covered that and just totally reamed Brian Stubbs and his research. And I imagine that this is the same stock. He shows that the Arabic and the Hebrew are the leading languages of this class, the Semitic tongues, and that the relationship of the Aymara is strong and unquestionable throughout. It's unquestionable. That's kind of like doubtless. It's unquestionable throughout that the principal words such as father, mother, brother, daughter, horse, ox, fire, sun, sky, light. Not sure why they'd have a word for horse, at least not before the Spanish conquest. Like dark, see, hear, eye, ear, hand, mouth, and similar primitive words are the same in the Aymara language and in the Semitic languages. I think that's probably not true.
The professor has also translated some of the hieroglyphic characters or figures on the ruins of an Aymara temple in Bolivia, where he finds a memorial of a great flood. Okay, I want to see that.
Here you go. I thought I was going to say Moroni was here.
I want to see that. He said Masonic signs are also found. So the compass and the square.
There you go.
Maybe a little dash too above the knee. Little one at the belly button. Maybe those
I'm not
two.
saying anything.
All right.
Because I hold my my sign sacred or whatever the line is.
Yeah, well.
I don't give my tokens for money, baby.
Okay, well, I guess I'm the one who will burn forever. Let's see here. So Masonic signs are also found signifying light, the thought, the word, the beginning, and many other signs, which after being lost for thousands of years are now being brought within the general comprehension. The learned will be astonished at all this, as we may find by the inquiries now being made, whether Asia or America was the original seat of the Amara or Semitic tongue as a language of a common race. Was the high plateau of South America the cradle of the Semitic, as that of Asia was of the Aryan kindred, or how was there a connection made by the peoples of two continents without some evidences existing of the transit? And then he goes on about the Book of Mormon, but there's a section about Masonry.
I couldn't tell where that was leading.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, Professor Rudolph.
So this is let me go back here. This is another contributor magazine. This is June 1895. The article it comes from is the lead page there on the right, Robert Edge, the Mysterious Preacher. This is the page that the quote shows up on the left, but this is the quote. Would you mind reading these two paragraphs?
On the top?
Oh, I got to move. Give me 1 second. Sorry.
That's okay.
I keep messing
thank you.
What I've got. There's that.
I think I was going to have to beg off. Excuse
these
me.
Two paragraphs here.
Bug out and beg off. On another occasion, Mr. Edge pronounced the secret societies as being man-made institutions through which the devil operated. In referring to Masonry, he said, although this institution dates its origin many centuries back, it is only a perverted priesthood stolen from the temples of the Most High.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this guy, Mr. Edge, said something that Mormons like, so now he's an expert on the subject, and we will quote him approvingly. After giving several Masonic signs, he testified that Jesus Christ himself was the chief and master Mason. See?
There it is. Then we've got a contributor magazine. This one is August 1883. And the page, the quotes on the left, this is the quotes. It's bottom of the left column, top of the right column. These ceremonies, in connection with mysterious objects, hieroglyphics, and the secret truths that were concealed in these hieroglyphics and prepared through these customs, were together named and included in these secret mysteries. They had their headquarters in the temples of Isis and Serapis, and were the emblem after which, as a sequel of the mysteries of Eleusis and Samothrason, and in later time have been instituted the order of Freemasonry.
The illusion mysteries.
It goes way back into these other myth stories that are completely unrelated, but it's in Freemasonry too, and there's some bit of truth to it. The secret truths that were concealed in those hieroglyphics, prepared through these customs, included in these secret mysteries. So there's that.
Right, and those were famous mystery religions.
Yeah.
Which means their mystery is a secret ritual of some sort.
Yeah. I don't have the year here, but this is back to the church's website. This is a talk given by President Russell M. Nelson. The temple.
He looks about 85 there, so maybe this was 16 years ago.
Somewhere in that range, I think. The temple and your spiritual foundation. Would you mind reading these two paragraphs?
So he's talking in general conference, huh?
Yep.
Temple ordinances and covenants are ancient. The Lord instructed Adam and Eve to pray, make covenants, and offer sacrifices. I think that when he says that, he's saying it goes back to Adam and Eve.
Yeah, he does.
Indeed, whenever the Lord has had a people on the earth who will obey his word, they have been commanded to build temples. The standard works are replete with references to temple teachings, clothing, language, and more. You see, if you can look in any culture and find connections to the temple, you can do the same thing with all the different books in the Bible. It's amazing, really. The standard works are replete. I just read that. Everything we believe and every promise God has made to his covenant people come together in the temple. In every age, the temple has underscored the precious truth that those who make covenants with God and keep them are children of the covenant. Thus, in the house of the Lord, we can make the same covenants with God that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob made, and we can receive the same blessings! Exclamation point.
Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob went to the house of the Lord and made the same covenants that we do in this day.
Not necessarily, but we go to the temple and make the same covenants that they made, whether it was in a temple or not, is how I read it.
Even though just during President Nelson's time as leader of the church, the members of the church aren't making the same covenants from one side of that chronology to the other.
Well, that's a good point. This maybe said this before he became the president of the church and started making all those changes. I should look this up. The temple and your spiritual foundation. Let me look this up and you go ahead.
Okay. So those are all the quotes that leave some degree of the church saying that Masonry is the endowment just corrupted and that Joseph Smith needed to restore it. The next thing we go into here is just what does the Bible, what is the year on that, by the way?
I don't know. What was the name of it? The temple in your spirit. Thank you. Okay. Continuing. Temple in your what? In your spiritual salvation?
Spiritual foundation.
Foundation. That's what it was. Thank you.
What does the Bible and biblical studies outside of Mormonism say about this connection? All right. Before I go into that, I'll let you tell me what year that was. I'm going to guess 2014.
Wow. I was way off. 2021. So he'd already been president for 3 years.
He probably already made changes to the temple by then.
He had.
Yeah.
So actually, he should know that what he's saying probably could not be accurate.
Yeah. It can't be true.
Yeah.
All right. So there's that. I'll just note here, biblical scholarship provides no evidence that the LDS temple ceremony is ancient or connected to Solomon's temple. Contrary to Joseph Smith's claims, the Jerusalem temple was dedicated to sacrificial rites with animal offerings and ritual purification at its center. Ordinances now performed in LDS temples, such as the endowment, baptism for the dead, or eternal marriage, have no precedent in biblical temple tradition. Its primary function, as outlined in Leviticus 16, was to provide atonement for sin as a precondition to worshiping the God of Israel. Outside of Mormonism, scholars of biblical studies are essentially unanimous. LDS temple rituals are not restorations of Christ's original church or of ancient Israelite practice. Instead, they are seen as 19th century innovations, drawing on Masonic ritual, Christian liturgy, and Joseph Smith's own theological imagination. In short, mainstream biblical scholarship does not recognize any historical or textual connection between the LDS endowment and either Solomon's temple or early Christianity.
Yeah, that's a problem. But you can see where all the gold stuff is in the main room. See that? You can see that in the diagram, right?
Yeah.
But also look to the left there where they have these rooms. See? There's these rooms in the wall. This is where the endowment was taking place. Over here in these rooms to the side with the storage items, not in the main hall.
Yeah, and all Smith has to do, he takes the font on the backs of 12 oxen, puts it into an LDS temple and says, hey, this is what they did. They did baptisms for the dead. And then we go back into, this biblical studies information, and you go to Solomon's temple and you see this same apparatus on the backs of 12 oxen. And you go, look, as a Mormon back in the 90s, I went, look, there it is. It's a baptismal font.
It's right there. But we're doing things in it that were never done in Solomon's temple. Yeah. But there's the font on the backs of the 12 oxen.
They were used entirely differently. So there's that. Okay, this is the mysteries of godliness, the history of Mormon temple worship, David John Berger. So David Berger, great scholar. Do you mind reading this as far as you want to?
The traditional origin of Freemasonry, which enlightened Masons view as mythological or legendary. Okay, so the traditional origin of Freemasonry is the construction of Solomon's temple by Master Mason Hiram Abiff. Actually, Freemasonry was a development of the craft guilds during the construction of the great European cathedrals during the 10th to 17th centuries. After the Middle Ages, lodges in Scotland and Great Britain began to accept honorary members and worked out rudimentary ceremonies to distinguish members of trade organizations. If you want to go there, it's fine.
In 1717, 4 fraternal lodges, perhaps actual Mason lodges, united as the Grand Lodge of England, considered the beginning of organized Freemasonry or speculative Masonry. The order spread quickly to other countries, included such prominent adherents as Mozart, Voltaire, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin. Some historians believe that Masons staged the Boston Tea Party. Later, Latter-day Saints may feel that Masonry constitutes a biblical time source of uncorrupted knowledge from which the temple ceremony could be drawn. However, historians of Freemasonry generally agree that the trigradal system of entered apprentice, fellowcraft, and master mason as practiced in Nauvoo cannot be traced further back than the 18th century. According to Douglas Knoop and G.P. Jones, two knowledgeable 20th century historians, it is highly probable that the system of masonry practiced at the organization of the Grand Lodge in London did not consist of three distinct degrees. This is also the point here is that apologists want to go to the very furthest back we can find masonry, take it as far back as possible and go, we're so far back, who knows what happened before that? And what the evidence around masonry and its founding and how it was used says that actually the masonry that Joseph Smith uses for the Nauvoo endowment actually doesn't go any further back than the 1700s, and it's a completely different organization and set of rituals if you go further back than that.
I think you could make a whole classification of anachronisms that were caused by Joseph Smith thinking that things that were relatively new were much older.
Yeah.
And whether that's the papyrus, which he dated back to Abraham, there's actually like 300 BCE, I think. So in other words, at least 1500 years wrong or difference between it. The Kinderhook plate he thought was old and not a new. Fraud or forgery. Horses, he thought they were new on the he thought they were old on the American continent. He didn't recognize that they were actually relatively new, and so he put them in the Book of Mormon with a host of other menagerie. And here with the Masonic ritual, he thought that was much older than it was. Of course, the Masons were saying it was much older than it was, but the truth was something else that Joseph Smith, as a prophet, should have been able to wean.
Yep. And then I'll just read this last one and then we'll finish up with this last little section. So they warn it would probably not be safe to fix a date earlier than 1723 or 1725 for the origin of the trigradal system. And that's the system that Joseph Smith uses for the endowment. Accepted masonry underwent gradual changes throughout a period of years stretching from well before 1717 to well after that date. The earliest speculative phase of Freemasonry may be regarded as beginning about 1730, though some symbolism had doubtless crept into Masonry by that date. It would not appear to have reached its full development for another 40 or 50 years. So there's that. I'll just say, too, as we head into the last section, if anybody wants to come into the show studio, ask your question, share your thought, I put that into the live chat, and I'll put that up on the screen as well. So the next one here is what I call this the all of that was bullshit section. And this is the modern church trying to get away from everything we just showed you. So this one here, Greg Kearney, I've interviewed him on Mormon Discussion. Greg Kearney is Mormonism's expert on Masonry. And there's a couple of them, but he's the one who's gotten the most showtime. And he did he did a session at the Fair Mormon Conference in 2005. And you can find this talk still, but this quote, at least as far as I know, is no longer part of the paper. It's been removed. And I would love if Fair Mormon would love to let us know where we can find this quote in the context of the rest of the talk. But when you go to Fair Mormon, you can find the talk. There's links there to the available media. You can find the talk. It does not have this quote with it anymore. But this quote is in lots of places, and it's I don't think anybody's denying that he did say this. It's just not part of the public record as far as I could tell anymore. So that to me on its own is a strange thing. RFM, would you read this thing on the right?
Certainly. So this is from what Greg Kearney said at Fair Mormon, Fair LDS, which is again fair, but which they have deleted from their archive. Is that correct?
As far as I know, the quote is no longer in. I don't know if it was part of a question and answer afterward, but they do have video footage with questions and answers afterward, or if it was in the talk itself, because when you go to the talk itself, it no longer has this quote.
All right, here it is. Unfortunately, there is no historical evidence to support a continuous functioning line from Solomon's temple to present, excuse me. So no evidence for that. We know what went on in Solomon's temple. It's the ritualistic slaughter of animals. Masonry, while claiming a root in antiquity, can only be reliably traced to medieval stone tradesmen. Masonry cannot be traced in any historical thread to Solomon's temple.
Yeah.
And you want me to continue?
Yeah, please. Would you finish that?
We use the story of the building of Solomon's temple and the master builder Hiram Abiff as the framework for a clearly medieval origin ritual. The earliest reference we have to stonemason guilds of any variety, the likely origin of Freemasonry is about 945 AD in the city of York in England. The notion that it goes back to Solomon's temple is just not proven in the historical record.
Yeah, so if you make that claim, he's acknowledging you would have no evidence for that. It would be a simple act of faith to make the claim, and that the evidence we do have suggests a much more modern beginning for Masonry. So there's Greg Kearney. It ended up making that quote ended up making its way into a Miston Sunday school class, which I love. I love those. This is delivered that talk. This was The Message and the Messenger, Latter-day Saints and Freemasonry, 2005 Fair Conference. The publicly available summary focuses. So you can still get the talk. You just can't get that quote inside of it.
Why would Fair delete that part of his talk?
I don't know. And I don't want to assume that's what they did. I just want to say it's not present when I try to find it. They've deleted things before, so they certainly have set precedent of doing that.
You're not present when I try and find you.
No, they've deleted me. They've deleted other people too. The quote, if I go back here, the quote seems to be agreeing with the critic at every point. And so I don't know why they didn't include it, but I will note that it's not helpful to the argument they would want to make based on trying to deal with the quotes that they get asked questions about.
Because they would want to have the endowment being performed in Solomon's temple.
They would at least want room that the Masonic rituals go back further and are consistent, and we really don't have enough to go on to clearly say that the Masonic rituals aren't ancient.
Yeah. If they're not ancient, and if they don't go back to Adam and Eve, Joseph Smith was wrong. And a primary underpinning of Mormonism gets taken out, which is that we're all saved on the same principles. It's the whole basis for having baptism for the dead and other ordinance work for the dead, is that we're all based on the same principle. It's the same basis for having Jesus Christ known about in the Book of Mormon before Jesus came.
Yeah. And it goes further than that. I mean, if Joseph Smith was misled and put his own stuff in, and it wasn't from God, and there was no need for Masonry, then you don't have need for the secrecy like the Masonic rituals impose. You don't have need to justify polygamy using it going back to the Temple of Solomon. And then you have to deal with a whole group of people in the 1840s and past who were, to be honest, manipulated by a false concept, a false narrative around why they were doing this the way they were doing it and what they were promising in those rituals that are directly taken from the Masonic ritual.
Yeah, the church has no problem saying that other leaders like Heber C, Kimball, etc., were off the mark, but the problem is the association that they make to Joseph Smith, and that this is coming from Joseph Smith.
Yep, it goes back to Smith. And if anybody out there is a believer and you just would want to, at this point, I can't believe at this point, after we've gone through all of this, you'd want to do this, but if you want to say, yeah, well, maybe Greg Kearney didn't say that, I'll simply note that you could go watch my interview with Greg Kearney, and while he doesn't say that quote, we spend an hour and a half of him communicating the exact same perspective.
Yeah. I see your question over here. I have another
that's not me.
an answer to. Is that from somebody who's there?
That's one of our folks who's going to.
Let him come on and ask their question. But first, is Ned Winfield up first? Or I'm sorry, are you done?
No. I got like one or two more things. So let me get
okay.
it really quick.
My apologies.
No worries. Fair Mormon, similarities between Masonic and Mormon temple ritual. Many of the Masonic symbols to which Mr. Norton refers predate Freemasonry by thousands of years. Masonry, while claiming a root in antiquity, can only be reliably traced to medieval stone tradesmen. To sum up, Mr. Norton has produced a list, but no context for that list. It is clear that Freemasonry and its traditions played a role in the development of the endowment ritual, but not to the degree Mr. Norton would like to suggest. Now, Mr. Norton is somebody who had a question written in, and he's wanting to connect things back to Joseph Smith. Further, he also brings up only similarities, not differences between the two.
No kidding. That's how you show dependence, is by talking about the similarities. This is so predictable.
Yeah, it's a strange argument that apologists make that unless it matches exactly, it just couldn't be Joseph Smith plagiarizing, as if all of us don't get that if we're going to plagiarize, we change it a little bit so that it can't be easily seen that it comes from some other source.
Yeah, what the apologists say is either you have to plagiarize 100% or not at all.
Right. For example, the central story of the endowment is the allegory of Adam and Eve. In Masonry, it's the story of the master builder of Solomon Temple, Hiram Abiff. Whole vast sections of the Masonic ritual are not and have never been found in the temple endowment.
Right, the narrative part. We get that. And what the heck are they talking about this allegory of Adam and Eve anyway? That's the way it went down.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that Fair's calling that story an allegory.
Yeah, and then I think the last one, and then also there's just a tiny little video, maybe 30 seconds or something. This is the last one.
Oh, right. This is from Schnell, David Schnell, Mock Schnell. Over at Keystone, right?
Yeah, that's the video we'll show here in just a moment. So this is the church's current church history topics. This is their newest attempt to smooth this over and make us all move on from it.
Is this what we had before?
I don't think so. This is different. So would you read this one, and I'll read the next page, and then we'll show the video, and then we can grab these folks down below who want to share some.
It is funny because this is different, but it's under the same kind of title.
Yeah,
on the church website under church history topics, Masonry. So it tells us a little bit about Freemasonry. Freemasonry is a fraternal organization that grew out of centuries-old European trade guilds. Freemasons or Masons meet in lodges where they ritually reenact a story based on the brief biblical account of a man named Hiram, whom Solomon commissioned to work on the temple in Jerusalem. During the reenactment, Masons advance by degrees using hand grips, keywords, and special clothing. Notice they don't call them signs, tokens, and robes. In Masonic rituals, Masons commit to be worthy of trust and to be loyal to their Masonic brothers. In addition to participating in these rituals, Masons meet socially, participate in community building activities, and make charitable contributions to various causes.
Notice what's most important to them that the Masonic ritual conveys, which is it commits its members to be worthy of trust and to be loyal to the Masonic brothers, aka the system. That's what they thought was important to note. Introduced, let's see, I'm gonna go back here just a second. Various causes. What is excuse me. Oh, it's the next sentence. There are some similarities between Masonic ceremonies and the endowment, but there are also stark differences in their content and intent. There are no known Masonic documents, so that's the same paragraph there. Masons told a story about their ancient forebears, how their ancient forebears had learned stonemasonry, used it to build Solomon's temple, protected the temple site, and held knowledge about their craft as a closely guarded secret. By Joseph's day, the boundaries between Masonry's early European history and its founding myths and traditions had long since been blurred. In other words, it's reasonable that Joseph Smith would have thought the myth narrative to actually be an ancient history telling of its founding events or where it goes back to. The rituals of Freemasonry appear to have originated in early modern Europe. Aspects of these ceremonies bear resemblance to religious rites in many cultures, ancient and modern.
So, in other words, even though Masonry isn't ancient, these the Masonic elements are. I think they're really kind of getting desperate there.
Don't you think what the view they really want us to move forward with, but they can't exactly clearly say it because it would be damaging, is that Joseph Smith misunderstood the Masonic narrative as history when it was just myth?
Yes, but I think what they're trying to say is laying the foundation for the conclusion that Masonry took its symbols and signs, that they were pre-existing and that they were ancient, and that even though they were ancient and they show up in, was it China? That was one of the places with the square and the compass that Colby and I talked about. Anciently, even though they show up in all these crazy places anciently, that somehow Masonry took all the right ones, which had already been scattered. This is really making my head ache. But that Joseph Smith figured out which were the right ones that Masonry had picked and then incorporated those into the endowment. Because, it's very important that we use a square and a compass as opposed to a circle and a triangle.
Yeah, right. Like we wouldn't find these shapes anywhere. It's such a coincidence that they show up. It must be evidence.
Yeah.
On May 3rd, 1842, Joseph Smith enlisted a few men to prepare the space in his red brick store in which the Nauvoo Masons met. Preparatory to giving endowments to a few elders, the next day, Joseph introduced the temple endowment for the first time to 9 men, all of whom were also Masons. One of these men, Heber C. Kimball, wrote of his experience to fellow apostle Parley Pratt.
Mhm.
And we read that letter earlier. We have received some precious things through the prophet on the priesthood, Kimball wrote of the endowment, noting that, quote, there is a similarity of priesthood in Masonry, unquote. He told Pratt that Joseph believed Masonry was, quote, taken from priesthood, but has become degenerated, unquote. So this is the church at least acknowledging the quote, not acknowledging the 4 or 5 other really central ones that came from early church leaders, but at least acknowledging this one. Joseph Fielding, another endowed Latter-day Saint and a Mason, noted similarly in his journal, we also showed that Masonry seems to have been a stepping stone or preparation for something else, referring to the endowment. So you have the church on one hand saying that by Joseph Smith's day, the boundaries between Masonry's early European history and its founding myths and traditions had long since been blurred, but then they end by telling you that at least 2 early church leaders said Joseph Smith said this was a stepping stone, a corrupted form of the endowment. It was a preparation for something else. Yeah. Okay, now here's the video. Let me add this.
Before you do that, by the way, let me just go ahead and say that if this argument is going to work, I think that you have to say that not only was Joseph Smith inspired in what he took out of the Masonic temple ritual for Mormons, but also that the creators of Masonry had to be inspired in the ancient symbols that they selected to be part of Masonry.
Yeah, you would. Yes, you would need the penalties. You would need the penalties, the hand grips,
the signs and the tokens.
You would need them to go back to something in ancient Christianity. Yeah,
I guess.
Otherwise, you have to deal with why Joseph Smith got it wrong, and what does that mean for all of us who have been doing an endowment that's Masonic when it didn't need to be?
Well, yes, right. Well, the thing is, it doesn't have to go back to anything. It just has to be represented somewhere in the world because it all is a corrupted form of the true endowment that Adam and Eve had. So the person who created Masonry, whenever that was, had to have been inspired in picking the correct things out of all these different cultures so that Joseph Smith could be inspired later on to pick those things out of Freemasonry.
Yes. But what it is that we do in the temple that are those things, they would need to have been present at Solomon's temple. They would have had to have been present with the Hebrews coming over to Egypt. They would need to be present with Peter, James, and John and Jesus Christ. They would need to be present with Adam and Eve at Adam Ande Amen. They couldn't be doing different rituals. They would need to be doing something extremely similar to what Mormons do today. That's also got to be close enough to what Mormons did prior to 1992. And whatever stayed consistent, that wasn't removed or changed, whatever stayed present in the endowment, those things would have to have been practiced by the early Christian church and the Old Testament Christianity, as Mormonism would call it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's zero evidence of that. And there's
evidence.
evidence.
The one thing that we can be sure of is that no matter how much the prophets monkey with the endowment, it is never going to lose its endowment power, right? And no matter how many times the Mormon prophets change the doctrine and the practices of Mormonism, they're never going to lead the church astray. It will never be that bad, in other words, in both.
And Joseph Smith said that the ordinances couldn't be changed, and because it was crucial that people all be saved on the same principles. Yeah. And with that,
you could say speaking as a man, but the problem is that so much of Mormonism is based on that, like I went over before. And I suppose you could probably find more examples given time.
Yeah.
But the whole Book of Mormon itself is based on that.
And so with that, we wrap up with this little video that came out last week.
Machschnell.
And we'll play that. We'll give a few thoughts here, and then we'll bring some folks on that have come into the studio.
So let's move on to another specific example of something that was there that has since changed. Okay. And these are referred to as the penalties, right? Tell me about those. Where did those come from? Why were they removed?
Okay, so I think I'm gonna get to your answer, but it requires taking a little bit of a detour.
Okay.
In Nauvoo, I think it's very, very clear that Joseph Smith used Freemasonry and the ceremonies of Freemasonry to communicate the endowment.
Sure.
So let me explain what that meant. So when you joined Freemasonry, and you can join today, part of the initiation is to experience a dramatic ceremony. And the Freemasonic ceremony narrates the story of Hiram Abiff, who was the chief Mason of the Temple of Solomon. And it's sort of a tragic tale of fidelity. He's murdered by people that want to get his knowledge for gain. As part of this way of teaching, it's an oral way of instructing that's useful for semi-literate audiences. There are elements of the drama that are used to teach principles.
Yeah.
And also punctuating the Masonic drama are promises to keep everything that you are experiencing secret. And when you promise to do that, you also accept a violent penalty in the case that you break that secrecy. Joseph Smith experiences the Freemasonic initiation, this dramatic ceremony, and he translates it for use in the temple. So the content of it is dumped out, but he uses this way of communicating to teach the plan of salvation and the redemption of Christ.
Yeah.
He Christianizes it. He adds Christian symbology into it. But one of the things he keeps are these promises of secrecy and the associated penalties. Violent penalties invoking death and dismemberment or whatever. Super alienating and scary, right?
Yeah. At least to our modern. I mean, it sounds like it was more common anciently, but
perhaps
obviously
but
a little
throughout the
weird
19th century, there were Latter-day Saints who felt alienated by it as well.
Sure.
And so in the late 20th century, those elements were completely removed. And so the penalties being removed, they performed a certain work, reinforcing this idea that there is a sort of privacy or secrecy to certain elements. But was that necessary? Was the work valid? Clearly, church leaders believed that God authorized them to remove them in a way that made sense to modern participants.
So because they're removed, it's obvious that God is okay with them being removed.
Right. The prophets will never lead the church astray, no matter how much they lead the church astray.
Yeah.
By the way, did you notice something was interesting? I think he was absolutely accurate in everything, except in the end where he started getting all speculative about the prophets, right? He didn't mention the surveys and all that kind of stuff. It's always got to be revelation. God telling his prophets, yeah, I think you should follow that survey that got like 90% from the people. That's all God does. He just tells them when to follow the surveys now. But he did describe this, right? He says about the drama in the Mason temple about Hiram Abiff, the master Mason, the chief Mason on Solomon's temple. It's the drama, right? And how these other people kill him because they want to get his knowledge for gain, and he won't give it to them, so they kill him. Okay, that's the deal. Now, my question for you, Bill, is does that sound anything like what we hear in the temple when we get to the line, "I do not sell my tokens for money"? It's the exact same thing. I do not give my secret knowledge away for money.
Yeah, and to repeat a thing that is in Masonry that that clearly isn't of ancient origin is deeply troubling. And again, it points to what Joseph Smith used this for. Joseph Smith used this because he saw Masonry have penalties of death and harm to yourself if you broke the secrets. Joseph Smith said, I like that. Let's take that. There's a narrative story that goes back to Solomon. So I can use this to bolster up polygamy. And I can implement things inside of a secret club and decide which members get to be on the inside of that. And they will all feel special being on the inside of that. And hence they will be more likely to do and keep the secrets that I've asked them to do and keep.
Joseph Smith shows a fascination with the creation accounts and the falling of mankind, or the falling of man, right? Adam and Eve, in that obviously it's in the Bible, but he goes through it. He does the Joseph Smith translation on it. We get it in the book of Moses. Of course, he did the Joseph Smith translation on everything, but he also goes into the book of Abraham. And we talk about the first 3 chapters of Abraham, but 4 and 5 is starting out with Genesis 1 and 2, the creation account. So he's very, very interested in this. And then lo and behold, it shows up as the narrative story that he's using in the temple instead of Hiram Abiff.
Yeah. Yeah. And they act as though, because again, what the apologists say is that because Joseph didn't use the Hiram Abiff story, then this obviously isn't plagiarism. And I go, of course he's not going to use the Hiram Abiff story. That would make no sense to use it. He wants to go way before Hiram Abiff and say, look, man, this is all the way back. And there's this moment in time where at Solomon, they're doing it. And then Hiram Abiff is what takes it into being degenerated. It's what takes it away from the true path. So I'm going to keep my story as something entirely different. It's a strange thing. And anyway, any other thoughts from you? Otherwise, we can bring Ned on and have a conversation with the folks below.
I would say that substituting the stories is clever, but it's not at all original.
No, it's what we all would do. I've had times where someone tells me a story as if it was their story. And I'm like, I've heard that before. It was like 2 months ago, I was watching this thing and, oh yeah, I repurpose, it's what we do. It's how Joseph Smith takes credit for things so that he's the master guy behind it all. Anyway. All right. So Ned, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing okay. How's the gain? Too high, too low?
You're great, my friend. What's on your mind?
Well, I'll tell you what, after listening to all this stuff, you could have me on for an hour and a half, and I'd tell you a bunch of details about Masonry and how it relates to the church and the concepts and principles.
You got your Masonic hat on, don't you, Ned?
That's because I'm a faithful Mason and I'm a member of the church.
Do they wear those hats in the temple, or do you call them the lodge, or is it both in Masonry?
The only one that's allowed to wear a hat in the lodge is the master when he's serving in that position.
Can he wear any kind of hat?
No, you wear I think it's a old bowler hat, but kind of a top hat type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This one's based on the 3 basic principles of Masonry, which is faith, hope, and charity. For our faith may be lost in sight and our hope end in fruition, but charity extends beyond the grave through the boundless realms of eternity.
Yeah, faith, hope, and charity, and the greatest of them all is charity, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's
It
right.
sounds like you're trying to Christianize Masonry, Ned.
I think that it's based on it because back in the days in England, it was the Church of England and Catholicism and Protestantism, and that was the true religion.
So folks may not know this in the chat. I don't know if you're currently with Fair. Are you currently with them?
No, I'm not currently with them, but I was in the past. I know Greg Kearney well. We
Yep.
haven't talked in a while, but you and I worked together on Fair.
Yep.
And I think what Fair wants to do, and the reason I'm not active with him anymore, is they want to promote the institutional church as be the primary focus in all things. And whatever they says, the Handbook of Instruction for all intents and purposes is official doctrine.
You
Yeah.
disagree with that?
I don't recall.
You don't think the church should be the primary focus in all fields of endeavor?
Well, I think I got something for you that you might think that's appropriate. You tell me if this goes with it.
Hey Ned, I can't have you playing music, and we'll get an issue there. So please turn that off. I want to ask you.
It's bad enough having you on the show at all.
Yeah, I want to ask you a question. So I want to pin you down for a moment, and I want you to state what your perspective. And I can't have you go on for 20 minutes. So just clearly, do you believe that Joseph Smith got revelation from God, fixing a corrupted form of the endowment known as the Masonic rituals, and that what Mormonism ended up with in the endowment is what God wanted us to have there, with all of that Masonic ritual in it?
I don't know. What I do know is that he used it as an adaptation for doctrine, principles, and covenants. Just like he had Emma Smith go out and find Christian songs to use in the church.
Hold
Right.
on. You're saying that he used it as an adaptation, but what he said is he told Wilford Woodruff and others, Heber C. Kimball and others, he told them that Masonry is a degenerative form of the priesthood, and that he was fixing it and restoring it, not that he was utilizing the thing.
That's what he believed. That's what a lot of the early brethren of the church believed. It wasn't true.
So then the endowment has untrue things in it.
No, the principles and the doctrines and the covenants are true. How they're represented and how they're used as a symbolic teaching method, that's what's different.
So
Like you could go ahead and shake someone's hand.
So penalties, but penalties of killing yourself if you reveal the things, while Masonry may not have been the God-given source for it. God wanted body harming gestures to be done, and for us to make commitments to keep those promises lest we harm ourselves. And Joseph just simply used Masonry to convey those things because it had it too?
No, I don't think that's a principle at all. I think that the principle is, if I give you my word, if I give God my word, I would rather die a horrible death than break my word. That's the principle of Masonry. And it's also the principle in the temple.
Yeah.
And also the executions of the penalties that were used back in Masonry are such that your body would no longer be whole. And it was taught by the religion back then, if your body wasn't whole, you could never be resurrected.
I'm going to ask you one more thing, and then RFM, if you got anything, you can ask.
Go ahead.
My last question is, don't you sense, Ned, that you come to every problematic issue in Mormonism, including this one, and it's only because things didn't unfold the way we expected them to, that you now have to create a new reconciliation for the thing that didn't turn out to be the way it was claimed to be?
And I think it depends on how you view the situation. I see the institutional church as separate from the gospel of Jesus Christ.
That's a convenience you've used.
I don't think it's a convenience at all. That's my reality.
It's a convenience that you've used when the church didn't add up. If it would have just showed up adding up to all the things it told us it was, we wouldn't need any of these workarounds. We only come up with a workaround when we're disappointed that it's not what we thought it was going to be.
Well, as long as you put your trust in the ever-living God, because He's the one who's going to decide where you are in eternity.
Those thought-stopping techniques, they work beautifully, Ned. All you have to do is...
Isn't that the truth, though?
So you don't need Mormonism.
Say again?
You don't need Mormonism. You just need faith in God then? Is that... We've never met before, right? I'm just trying to figure out what you believe, Ned.
Well, I believe that God is just and perfectly merciful, and whatever He decides will be perfect in eternity, and whatever that is fine with me.
So you don't need Mormonism, according to Ned Scarsbrick.
Oh no! You whatever level of heaven or that.
You don't need Mormonism to be exalted in the highest degree of the celestial kingdom, according to Ned Scarsbrick, correct?
Wasn't it Swedenborg who came up with the idea of the 3 degrees of heaven?
It was another coincidence.
But still, you don't need Mormonism. You can be exalted without Mormonism, correct, Ned?
I think that's possible, sure. Especially people who are born before 8 years old.
No.
Yeah,
Forget about it. You don't need Mormonism. Ned,
No.
I don't need Mormonism to be exalted. Is that a true statement?
I think that's true, yeah. And I'm going to get in trouble with that. I'm going to
I hope so. That's what I'm trying to pin you into this corner. You know that. I want you to get in trouble. You're an active member then, Ned?
Yes, I do. I go.
Okay.
Retired from the United States Navy, and I've served in the temple as a temple ordinance worker. And so I think the principles, the covenants that we make are good. And if we live and abide by them and make them who we are, and we have the faith in God that Meshach,
Shadrach, Meshach, and to bed we go.
Abednego. Who's named Abednego? Sounds like an Iraqi used car salesman, right? I don't know.
I guess so. I guess so. But I'm also understanding that you don't believe that Joseph Smith was a prophet.
No, I think you do. I received a witness from the Spirit that the Lord told Joseph Smith to bring forth the Book of Mormon.
Okay, but I'm confused. I'm confused because you said he was mistaken about where he got the temple endowment. He was mistaken about Masonry.
No, I don't think he was mistaken. I think he used it as a tool.
So you think Masonry does go back to Solomon's temple then?
Oh, of course not.
Well, that's what Joseph Smith said.
Well, and he was wrong about that.
So you don't believe Joseph Smith was a prophet?
No, I don't. I think that's a false dichotomy.
What else was he mistaken about, Ned?
Oh, a lot of things.
Like plural marriage?
Wasn't a good idea. Wasn't a good idea.
Was it from God?
Didn't well, he had a conversation with Bill Marks just 2 weeks before he died.
Why are we saying Bill Marks when everywhere is William Marks? Why do you do that?
I like Bill rather than William.
I got you.
So that's when he said, look, I've been deceived.
Anytime
everybody was practicing it, you got to stop.
I love
you believe Joseph Smith was a prophet, even though he got deceived about something like plural marriage. You got deceived thinking it was from God and he was wrong.
That's so messed up.
People make mistakes. That was a serious one. He was
wrong,
but
prophets can't. Otherwise, they're not prophets, Ned, right?
I don't.
How do you tell, Ned? How do you tell whether?
Well, look about Moses and the water from the rock. He was going to do it. He did it. No, God is the one.
Ned, defending it the way you are. Ned, the way you're defending it the way you are is to bring something else up. I want you to just address the questions. How do you tell the difference? RFM just pinned you down and got you to say that you agree that there are lots of things about Joseph Smith's behavior and life and actions that didn't come from God, and other things you think did, and yet how do you discern which is which? And how did you get it right? And all the saints in the past and the prophets themselves couldn't discern it.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you believe in radio waves?
I don't know how it is that you think that you're smarter than Joseph Smith as a faithful
No, I
Mormon.
don't.
That's what blows me
don't.
away.
I don't.
You
How
think
do
you're
you-
smarter than
Question.
Joseph Smith.
Do you believe in radio waves?
Ned, how do you know which teachings come from God?
That's the point.
How do you
The
tell?
way-
How do you
From
know?
the witness of the only one that's true, and that's the Holy Ghost.
Okay, how do
There's
you know?
lots of witnesses
Yeah.
that
How
are
do you-
false.
Ned, how do you
Just
know?
like there are a lot of radio waves that
Ned,
are false.
Ned, forget radio waves.
Right.
Ned, how do you know that polygamy practiced by Joseph Smith was wrong, but Heber C. Kimball didn't know?
I don't know. I wasn't born back then.
Yeah.
I didn't talk to HCB.
It's a
I don't
convenient,
know.
it's a convenient leap of perspective that you've taken in order to resolve this for you, which the saints prior to you had no benefit of doing such, and they just believed and did Mormonism in this corrupted way.
You could only do what you understand at the time.
I think,
Learn and grow,
Yeah.
things change.
wow,
True?
you could make Mormonism true out of anything, couldn't you?
No.
No,
Yeah.
that doesn't apply to Joseph Smith saying that this it came from Masonry. Either he was right or he was wrong. You're saying he was wrong, which means that you know more than Joseph Smith did, at least on this issue, correct?
No, I don't believe that.
Well, if he said it came from Masonry and you're saying it didn't, and that Joseph Smith was wrong, all of
saying
which you've
the
already
teaching-
said,
I'm saying
then you
the
must
teaching
mean
method-
that you are smarter, you know more than Joseph Smith does on this issue, right?
No, I'm saying the teaching method came from Masonry, not the covenants, not the
Okay.
principles.
We're talking
Not-
apples. You're trying to get as hard as you can to get into the oranges. I know.
No, I like oranges.
Well, I do too, but we're talking about apples is the problem.
How are you able to know polygamy is not from God, but Joseph Smith didn't?
He finally found out he was deceived, and then after he found out he was deceived,
Who deceived
2
him?
weeks later, before, if he had not have been killed at Carthage, that would have been the end of polygamy.
Right, in that alternate reality. But Ned, who deceived him? Who the hell deceived Joseph Smith about polygamy being a good idea if it wasn't God?
Husband is the devil.
So Joseph Smith couldn't tell the difference between a revelation from God and a revelation from the devil, in spite of the fact he said he could.
Man, if that's not leading the church astray, the church just could not ever be led astray.
I
It's
told you, Bill. I told you.
Ned, and I appreciate it. We're going to move on to other folks, but I really appreciate you helping us prove our point. Thank you.
Hey,
very much.
Ned, you're a good sport. I appreciate your coming on the show. I've never met you before, but I'm actually kind of impressed
Yeah. Have a great
and
day.
mildly frustrated.
As you were, gentlemen.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. At ease.
A Mormon can get themselves out of any box.
You got to clip this baby.
Oh,
It's not quite a short. It's kind of a long short or a short long, but we got to clip this baby. That was great that Ned showed up. I think I've never met him, but I think that I remember hearing, 10 years ago. I should have told him when he was here, maybe still watch it. He would do this thing for Fair Mormon, or I think it was for Fair, and he would like play the hymn from the Navy, or I don't remember the name of it, but I think I would have at the time because I listened to several of those and I thought they were interesting.
they're no Radio Free Mormon, that's for sure.
Well, no, thank God for that.
All right, just a note. Another truth seeker, same issue we had last show at Mormonism After Dark. Camera and mic are both not connected. You at least got to get your mic connected. But while we're doing that, I will at least read the question to RFM that you asked in the chat. RFM, you recall in a previous endowment iteration that the narrative states, paraphrasing, as far as Adam and Eve are concerned, it is strictly figurative. Now, that's Spencer W. Kimball said that in a church manual as well, unquote. So what do you think they were trying to convey? What were they trying to say when they said it was strictly figurative?
I think that's a holdover. That's one of those holdovers from the Adam God theory that was put in there, probably Lecture in the Veil or something by Brigham Young, because specifically what it talks about is the creation. It says the creation is pure. It says that insofar as the man and the woman are concerned. The creation is purely figurative insofar as the man and the woman are concerned. That was part of the lecture for the new people who were receiving the endowment for the first time. So it was a lecture at the beginning as opposed to, you know, a lecture at the veil at the end or anything. But it was a lecture that was given. I tend to think it was a holdover from Adam God, because what it's saying is this creation account, that's just totally symbolic about Adam and Eve. This has nothing to do with the way that they were really created, you know. There's nothing about this being formed out of the ground and then out of a rib. We all know what the real truth is, and it sounds like Adam God.
If we would have sat for Ned with, you know, another 2-3 hours, and we would have just gone from polygamy to race, Ned would have gone, yep, Joseph Smith was wrong, bad, wrong, didn't seem to tell the truth, wrong, and then it all just adds up at the end. I don't know. I
don't know why he's a Mormon. He doesn't need prophets. All he needs is God.
Speaking about prophets, here's Tim Rathbone. Tim, how are you doing?
I'm doing just great.
I don't even want to ask what you're doing.
So much.
He's petting his cat.
He's petting his cat. That's right. That's the way to put it.
This is Monkey. This is one of 16 cats that we have.
Are you kidding me?
No, my roommate and his late wife used to foster cats, and he just kept them. Well, 2 are mine, 14 are his.
That's a sweet little cat. Is it a he?
Yeah, he's Monkey. This is Monkey.
Hi, Monkey. Hello, Monkey.
Hi,
Monkey. A sweet little monkey.
What do you think, Tim? What about tonight struck you?
Okay, you got. I have to say, excellent job, research, excellent, all the way around.
Praise from Caesar.
Just really, really good and fun to listen to.
Well, thank you. How'd you like the fun we had with Ned Scarsbrick?
Excellent.
By the way, I gotta say, good for Ned for calling in.
Exactly. Yes,
It
Ned.
seemed like a bad
Thank you. No, he was fine.
Yeah,
he was good. He was great. He was great.
You know, that'd be fun for 2 or 3 hours. People would love that for 2 or 3 hours.
I would listen. Okay, I would watch and listen. All right.
Okay,
Ned,
be careful.
Yeah.
Don't make this into an invitation, because I know he's been like really trying to get on the show.
But
Okay.
he has. But you can also see, by the way, RFM, the apologist doesn't, you know, the goal is not, let's get to the truth of it. Like, you ask your hardest questions and I will field them.
Mhm.
It is, let me make a correlation over here or over there. Let me get the conversation away from directly answering that point. And so the conversation would be fun if Ned would take on the questions, but
That's when you know you got him.
yeah. When you ask and they have to answer, yes.
And they're always changing the subject.
At
Let
the
me
end of the
tell
day,
you about radio waves. I
He
once had a Model T when I was a kid, and I drove it from Utah to San Diego.
he was trying to make the point that he's better at discerning via the Holy Ghost when all he's had is time and history on his side. He's had the data come out, and he's had to come up with a new way to figure it out.
I think the brethren would be interested in Ned's claim that he is led more by the Holy Ghost than the founding prophet of the Mormon Church.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Smith got polygamy wrong, but that Ned Scarsbrick wouldn't have fell for that shit.
It was a horrible mistake. He was deceived. By who? By Satan. Are you kidding me?
He's the one who told us the handshake thing. He's the one who told us how we tell. No one else knew how to tell until Smith told us how to tell. And then Smith got it right. And Ned Scarsbrick, Smith got it wrong. And Ned Scarsbrick gets it right. Isn't that amazing?
It is. Well, he's a smart guy, and he's led by the Spirit, so he could have it right and Joseph Smith be wrong. The thing that's crazy is that a faithful Mormon believes that.
Yeah. Ned's Mormonism is different than Mike Ash's Mormonism, is different than Gordon's Mormonism, Steve Densley's Mormonism, from Stephen Harper's Mormonism, different than Patrick Mason's Mormonism, different than, you can go on and on.
I kind of like Ned Scarsbrick's Mormonism.
It's
You get to wear hats.
it's better than Marky Peterson's, that's for sure. Anything else, Tim?
There's garment symbols on the front. Did you see the garment symbols on the front of Ned's hat? He's really out there.
It's ancient.
There was the square and the compass right there in my face.
One of the things that I keep telling people is about this book,
Yeah.
Light on Masonry by Bernard. This was published in 1829. This has got Morgan's expose and a lot of other stuff that was occurring in New York at the time. It has the anti-Masonic Constitution, which William W. Phelps is named in. Okay. And Art DeHoyos edited it, and he's added a bunch of other stuff to it that was not published in the manuscript.
When did that
Okay.
come out?
This was published in 2008.
Okay. 17 years
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah, 2008. There were 43 Masons in Nauvoo, the majority from New York and Ohio. When this happened, the Masonic Lodge ceremony was not written down. It was not. In fact, Art told me that it wasn't until the 1990s that all the lodges performed the same ceremony. Now, so what they did was they took what they remembered from their lodges and they created their own ceremony that was unique to the Nauvoo Lodge. And Art has has the original book with their names and the ceremony written in it. And there are portions in there, he told me, that directly are in the temple. And the new name is in their ceremony, in their Masonic ceremony.
Okay, now whose Masonic ceremony is that? You said they didn't write it down until 1990. Is that right?
No, it was not codified until
Yes.
1990. It was written down like William Morgan was the first one to publish it. Then everybody took Morgan's book and Bernard put it in Light on Masonry and other people put it in there. And then you had Duncan's Monitor and you had other exposés that came out at the time. But nobody had everything. See, what Bernard did is he put as much together as he knew for Scottish Rite and York Rite Masonry. So each lodge or each state had a different ceremony, and it varied from lodge to lodge, just like the temple. It wasn't until the 1876, 77, whenever Brigham Young did it, it wasn't written down until St. George.
Right.
So,
Tim, what version was Solomon using?
Is that Blue Lodge? Scottish, right?
I think it was the Black Lodge. I don't know. They weren't using it at all.
Yeah, they weren't.
But
they weren't using it at all. If we're just honest, they weren't using it at all.
The book of Exodus describes the robes of Aaron and his sons, the priests, and they're totally Masonic. Have you ever read those?
Oh, yeah.
I think it might be Exodus chapter 18 or something.
Everybody does the compass in the square, but nobody puts the dash mark on their hat. You know what I mean?
Well, another thing is after what's his name gave his paper. Who was it?
Reed Durham.
When Reed, they actually went over to the visitor center and removed the weather vane from the model of the Nauvoo temple.
The weather vane with Moroni? What did it have with it?
Well, it has flying Moroni with a compass in a square.
Yes.
It was this way. They went and removed it from the temple, model of the temple in the Nauvoo Visitor Center after he gave his talk. Okay.
Yes, well, that worked out well. But once again, the whole idea of hide. We've got to hide stuff.
Hide stuff, exactly.
By the way, hiding things is also a thought-stopping technique. If you can't find it, you can't think about it. It's a thought-stopping technique as well.
I'm starting to think that radio waves are a thought-stopping technique.
Yeah, I think they are. Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
You too.
See you Friday. Bye-bye.
All right, Bryce, how are you?
Hi, hello again. Long time no see.
Awesome.
Hi, Bryce.
Hi. So I joined Masonry back in 2010, so 15 years now. Back at that,
you're not going to mention radio waves, right?
No.
All
right. I was still an active member of the church back at that time, and I noticed as I went through each of the 3 degrees, in every degree, there was certain elements that strikingly similar.
The hand clasps.
To the verbiage in the ritual, the hand clasps are identical.
Has it a name? It has.
A lot of the wording that's used in certain components of each of the in each of the 3 degrees are all pulled from what we know is the endowment. And it was funny because after I had became a master mason and I actually ended up going through the chairs. I was worshipful master of my lodge twice. And
you went through the chairs?
So going through the chairs, what we call going through the chairs. So in the lodge, so you take a position.
Uh-oh. I
Master
think
of
the other Masons got you. That's not funny. He could be being William Morganed all over the place right now.
Oh, God. No. Yeah, that's why I got to be careful what I say.
Is there no help for the widow's son? Bryce,
your camera is shut off. Your sound got really bad. I'm going to let you go.
I think it's a bad connection, and we don't get to find out what happens with going through the chairs.
Yeah.
Oh.
I just wanted to know if there was
a chair. Is the sound better? Or is the sound better? Or can you hear me okay?
Tolerable if you'll just quickly tell us what going through the chairs means.
Right. So what that basically means is you go through different positions. So I was junior warden, and then I was senior warden, and then I was worshipful master. Okay. So as you progress, every year we have an installation, and so that means each guy takes a new chair. So that's called going through the chairs.
I see. Bryce, were you ever the Tyler?
I was the inner guard. So the outer guard, the Tyler, I haven't done that one. Those are both. My favorite chair was the inner guard because I got to carry a sword.
The outer guard doesn't. The Tyler doesn't get to carry a sword?
They both have swords. They both have swords, yep. Both armed with a drawn sword to keep off all cowards and intruders for Masonry.
Porter Rockwell was a really good Tyler, I understand.
Oh, right. I imagine he would have been.
Well, thank you, Bryce.
Yeah.
Don't mess with Porter with a drawn sword. Sorry, Bryce. But I'm glad for the information. Thank you so much for calling.
Yeah. All right.
You're back on Ned, aren't you?
I am. I just not you. And it's, it happens on one issue. We're on
do that.
Right? And then we're on polygamy, and you could just move from issue to issue, and he would constantly go, you can already see it. He would constantly go, that didn't add up right. Here's my new answer. I figured it out. Somehow the saints and the prophets of the past didn't. And you would just go issue to issue and get that. And anyway,
I think he's thought about all the issues long and hard.
Yeah.
I think he's given them a lot of thought and a lot of study, and he's come up with a rote and pre-planned way of avoiding all the issues he doesn't want to answer.
Yeah. He figures out the radio waves. Brigham Young couldn't figure it out. Heber C. Kimball, Joseph Smith, and all the members around him couldn't figure it out.
Whenever a Mormon starts talking about radio waves, you know that the Holy Ghost is soon to follow.
Yeah.
And you just got to tune that radio to the right channel, and I guess he can do it better than Joseph could.
Yeah. Yeah.
So another truth seeker, we're going to have to end here. Saying some would say that during the crucifixion, when the veil was rent in twain, that the LDS wrongly sewed it up again. The story of the tabernacle. So God wanted many people to come up to see him directly. Since they did, it could be said that God commanded a plan B, the tabernacle and future temples. Let me go back to this thing, okay, about the veil. Now, the veil is rent in order to show access in the epistle to the Hebrews, that people have access now to the Holy of Holies, right? It's not mediated by anybody. It's accessed by the power of Christ, the Holy of Holies representing the presence of God. So you've got that, but also Hebrews likens the veil to the flesh of Jesus too, which itself had to be torn, i.e. violently ripped apart as part of his crucifixion in order for us to have access. And I think that Mormons are trying to use that part now. I don't recall ever hearing that in Mormon lessons or whatever growing up. I know it from my own studies of the Bible, separate and apart from Mormonism, but it seems like they're trying to co-opt that now because they're really, really trying hard to say that the veil represents Jesus.
Yeah. And the garments represent Jesus, and
Everything represents Jesus.
because we don't want to talk about all the other things that don't add up, let's just stick with Jesus.
Lucifer represents Jesus. Everything in the temple represents Jesus.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
just-
nice because before that, really nothing represented Jesus in the temple.
No. So at least we're moving in the right direction.
Yes. There
Uh,
were two signs of the first and second tokens of the Melchizedek priesthood, which I think can reasonably be interpreted, and they are, presented as being related to Jesus and his crucifixion. So that is as much as Jesus was in the temple before all the pictures and the additions that have happened recently.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's the end of it. We've met the end. We've gone way long, over 3 hours tonight. So I'm super sorry about that, RFM. But I do want to thank those who hung around. Folks, we do need your support. So please consider going to mormonismlive.org. Click the donate button. $5 or $10 a month would be great. We very much appreciate the support, and it helps us keep putting conversations like this together. Anything else you want to say? Otherwise, I'll just close it out and we'll get out of here for the night.
I'm looking forward to seeing everybody on Friday night at Mormonism After Dark. Got a lot to talk about, and want to hear your thoughts about things. And hopefully, we'll be able to get back to the fun Mormon things. By the way, I've been doing a study in the Book of Mormon, which I'm going to be doing my next RFM show on. And it has to do with chiasmus, not chiasmus in the Book of Mormon, but chiasmus in the Radio Free Mormon, which makes you wonder, how can there be chiasmus in the Radio Free Mormon if I'm not an ancient Hebrew?
Yeah. How are you using ancient poetic styles in your work unknowingly?
Yeah, it's crazy, but I document it, and I've been working really hard on it and highlighting and structuring and all sorts of things. And I'll share with you lots of fun stories about me and chiasmus, because we go back, way back. We went to the high school prom together, actually.
Yeah.
That's how far back we go.
RFM was a Hebrew poet and didn't know it. All right, folks, have a great night. We appreciate you joining the show. Hope you like it. Please leave your comments there in the chat, whether it's a live chat or down below. Let us know whether you like this episode or not. Let us know if you want Ned back on for a longer extended conversation somewhere on the channel.
Please say no. Please say no.
I'm happy to entertain that, but Ned would have to answer some questions. We'll see how that goes. Well, folks, thank you.
The problem is he thinks he is answering the questions.
No.
Radio waves.
No. Like and subscribe, folks. Thank you for being part of this, and we're glad to be a part of your week as well. And we'll see all of you guys on Friday night. Take it easy.
Good night.
Bye-bye.